and Megan Maloney, the District Attorney for Kennebec and Somerset counties. I'd like to also, although it's not a council meeting, I know a lot of councilors are here tonight. I did want to mention that Councilor Austin is out of town. He couldn't make the information meeting as well, and would have liked to have been here. So, city councilors, raise your hands so you can be. Kevin Judkins, Mike Mishu, Stephanie Sinkowitz, Annalee Morris-Pauley, Josh Lilly, Courtney Gary Allen, and Eric Lynn.
Who could forget?
You had that big guy standing behind you, so I couldn't see the hand. So, while I've presided at many meetings, moderating a community forum like this is new to me. So, as the agenda sets out, I will ask our panelists to provide a little information about themselves, followed by an overview of their role in connection with the unhoused population. Once we get through the individual presentations, I will open it up first for questions and answers for our panelists. After that, and as time allows, I'll open up the forum for general comments. I'll work from the podium. I'm going to rely on the city manager to assist with the microphone in the audience when we get to that portion of the agenda. I'll ask the remarks be kept to 3 minutes or less so that all may get a chance. Since this is an Augusta community forum, I also ask that residents or business owners in Augusta be afforded priority when asking questions or offering comments. When it is your turn, please identify yourself and where you're from. I'll do my best to maintain a good pace. I appreciate civility in our public discussions, and I hope you all do too. Let me begin by talking a little bit about what has been done in Augusta lately. In 2024, we established the Augusta Task Force on Homelessness. That group was charged with inventorying existing services, identifying gaps in services, researching best practices, and putting recommendations and strategies into a usable plan that leads to successful outcomes for people experiencing homelessness in the area. The task force held multiple public meetings, and their work culminated in a final report presented to the City Council in March of 2025. Following the issuance of the report, I established a smaller homeless advisory group to help ensure that the city is taking steps towards accomplishing the goals set forth in the task force report. And the chairperson of that advisory group, and also a member of the task force, Nancy Fritz, she's in the front row here. The final report and other information about the task force work can be found on the city's website. The City Council recently developed a licensing ordinance for homeless shelters. The Planning Board is currently considering recommended changes to our land use ordinance pertaining to homeless shelters, including the expansion of the number of zones within the city where shelters could be located as a conditional use. The City Council recently approved a new loitering ordinance. The City Council recently approved an affordable housing TIF for the Riverlands Permanent Housing Project, supportive housing project on Oxford Street. The City Council is presently exploring ways to establish public transportation in the city, and we are constantly reassessing and adjusting our police response to citizen concerns and complaints. Going forward, I anticipate council discussion and action towards a request for proposals to gauge interest in some sort of public-private partnership to stand up a low-barrier shelter in town. At this point, I'm going to turn to our panelists for their introductions and their comments about their respective roles in connection with the unhoused population, and perhaps they can elaborate on some of those initiatives that I've just recounted. So let me first turn to the City Manager, Jared Mills.
Thank you, Your Honor. Great to see everybody. Great turnout. Thank you for being here. I'm the City Manager. I've been with the city. I was hired in 1998 by Mr. Brigio over there to my left. Primarily, my career has been in law enforcement, but I retired from the police department in 2023, and I've been the Assistant City Manager and now the City Manager since 2024. So my role as the City Manager is, it's been described best, and I've used this, I didn't make this one up, I actually got it from somebody. If you picture an hourglass, the council is at the top of the hourglass. They're the policymakers. I'm that little thin piece in between that the sand goes in, and then below is all of the department heads and staff that actually enact the policies of the City Council. So how that works is I work with the council, they direct us with policies, and it's my job to make sure those policies are carried out by the team, if you will. So that's my role with the homeless situation as well. It's been something that we've been dealing with for a very long time. In my police role, I did certainly, and certainly in the management, assistant management role. So as things come up, as we need to pivot, as the mayor indicated, it's my job to make sure we're carrying out the wishes and roles of the council through the department heads, and they supervise their folks, and they can talk about that. So when you have an issue that you can either contact your city councilor, or you can contact the manager's office. That's another avenue for you, because I'm that direct person to the folks doing the work. So that's really my role. Probably a few more things I'm missing, but my role in the city as well. So.
Thank you. Earl Kingsbury, our Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Earl Kingsbury. I'm the Director of Community Services. I've been with the city for little over 18 years now. 13 of those 18 years was with the Civic Center, 8 years as the Assistant Director of the Civic Center, 5 years as the Director, and in this current role as the Community Services Director, I've been here for 5 years. As the Community Services Director, I have 7 bureaus that fall under my purview, and one of those bureaus is Health and Welfare, or General Assistance. General Assistance is what pertains to this meeting here tonight. And as General Assistance, we are just that. We are assistants. For the folks that qualify for General Assistance, for food, housing, heating assistance, personal care items, but we are assistants for the folks that qualify. And once folks do qualify, they have to follow the rules to keep to maintain their eligibility. And that's what I do with that. I'm also, one of the other things, I'm in charge of the parks and all the green space in the city. So you might see us out and around quite a bit, but as it pertains to this group, it's the General Assistance Office that falls under my purview. I was also part of the Homeless Task Force, and I am part of the Homeless Advisory Group as well.
Part of our staff liaison with those groups.
Yes.
Yep. Chief Lally.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join this group. It's an amazing turnout. This is terrific. It's good to see civic input. As your chief of police, I've been the chief for a little over 2 years now. I've been with the city of Augusta for 31 years, slightly more than the city manager. And
He might have trained me.
in my time at the police department, I've literally worked just about every possible position or job or duty through that department. So I enjoy being able to go in and connect with my staff. With that connectivity comes my role in this process. We're trying to strike that even balance between the needs of a part of our population versus the wants and needs of another part of our population. And trying to make those two have a peaceful and amicable center part is challenging at times. One of the biggest things that we seem to be deciphering lately is the well-known homeless protocol that was put out by the Attorney General's office in 2022. It was a very broad-based guidance that was provided to municipalities, indicating that they were tasked with coming up with an actual protocol for how to handle, how to provide services for the unhoused population. Now, the unhoused population has grown exponentially since I came. We probably had 10 people that were without homes. We knew them all by name. We knew them when we were doing our midnight beat checks. And it was a different environment than it is now. We didn't have the opioid epidemic, for lack of better. So there's a lot more challenges that we find now in the role that we have. But with that homeless protocol, what we have done is we've afforded services to the folks that need those services, whether it be through the police department, through our community response specialist, or options liaisons when we have one assigned to us, or for our private sector folks, or nonprofit organizations like UCLC, Angels, ACT Center, places like that. We partner with all of them to make sure that we're providing those services to the folks that are, A, in need, but also, and this is a key point, are willing to accept them. That protocol identified a lot of different violations that they said that if you were without a home, that you were to be given, not you might be given, but you shall be given specific courtesies and considerations if certain violations such as, well, I'll pick one, drinking in public or disorderly conduct, if you're engaged in certain behaviors in the community. What we have found is through our records management system, which is a fancy name for our computer system, we're able to track who we deal with on a regular basis. The police department takes approximately 34,000 calls per year, little over 125 plus or minus per day. And in that time frame, we have the ability to go back and look to see how many times we encounter, we'll use my name, Kevin Lully, and what we had for encounters. So what we have done, one of the newest pieces in this is we have, I don't want to say shifted, but we now approach things, at least this season, with a two-prong approach. If you need services and are willing to accept those services, then we provide those services. Dawn, who you will meet in just a moment, is certainly our subject matter expert. She's out in the community every day, and she is, without a doubt, making connections that I, as a police officer, can't. Let's call it what it is. When you see me in the uniform, the vast majority, including some of my own friends, they see the uniform and they want to turn the other way. Not necessarily, I get it, but it's not necessarily the most efficient way to provide and offer services if they're not going to be accepted, or if somebody has fear that they may be charged, summoned, arrested, or otherwise have a negative interaction with police, then they're going to go head the other way. That's where Dawn comes in. On our side of it, if you are not going to accept those services, but you're continuing to engage in those activities in the community, such as disorderly conduct, fighting, stealing, you're leaving your messes all over the sidewalk, you're defecating or urinating in public where people can see, you've been warned for these, you're still not adhering to the rules, then you will be summoned, and if it's an arrestable offense, you will be arrested. We're not criminalizing you being unhoused, but what we are doing is taking action against your actions. Our job is public safety. That's what we're faced with every day. And so if we're not addressing those, then we're not doing our jobs as law enforcement officers. I think I'll end it there before I burn up all the time.
All right. Thank you. Don Kearns, our Community Resources Specialist with the department.
So I'm Dawn Kearns, Community Resource Specialist with the Augusta Police Department. I've been in this role for almost 2 years with the city itself and a little over 6 years in the capacity of the Options Liaison. So in thinking about what I was going to say here tonight, I was trying to come up with words to describe what I do that is easy to understand and not super expansive. And what I came up with is that I fill gaps. So where people are not connecting, whether it's bringing resources to the police department or bringing it to the community, I'm doing short-term gap filling. Do my best to meet people where they're at, no matter what group of people we're talking about. Bringing, whether it's supplies, education, transportation, you name it, that's what I'm doing. I spend most days in the community, partnered with the Link Center, UCLC, Access Center, all sorts of different organizations in the community that are doing the same job, but again, trying to bridge the gaps between all of these resources and serve people. My goal is to keep approaching people no matter what's going on with them until they're ready to accept services or treatment, if that situation dictates that. That's where you'll find me most days, spending most of the time downtown.
Thank you. And last but not least, Megan Maloney, who is our district attorney for Kennebec and Somerset counties.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. My job is I take an oath to uphold the law. So when there's a violation of the law that is brought in by Augusta Police Department, if that case can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then my office charges that case and gives a complaint to the court. Where all of you come in is I can only charge that case if I can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. So I always want to take the opportunity at forums like this to remind everyone, I do need you to call the police if you're seeing behavior that is concerning to you. And I do need you to agree to write a statement, to be a witness. It doesn't mean that the case will necessarily go to trial. Frankly, most of our cases don't. But I can't even take the first step of charging the case unless I have evidence that I could put before a jury if it were to go to trial. So I always like to make sure that people know that. Sometimes I know I've heard from people, they get discouraged. They say, oh, I've seen this happen so many times. Why should I even bother calling? Because we do keep track of what's happening. And it does make a difference when you call. It does make a difference when you're involved. And when I can prove the case, I charge it. That we work very closely with Chief Lully, and our offices work very well together. And I am a huge fan of the Augusta Police Department. Their work is professional. They are meticulous with attention to detail, and that enables me to charge nearly all the cases that come in. However, I did want to take this chance to say that we all agree that jail is not the answer, because the maximum jail sentence for criminal trespass is a couple of days. So,
All agree. Don't say stuff
Please,
like that.
please,
and I
please,
appreciate
please
that.
don't interrupt.
So,
Let
I
her
appreciate
finish,
that.
please.
Well, the point that I'm making is a couple of days is not going to solve the problem. But there is a solution. So I just want, and you can disagree with it if you choose to, which I'm sure many people will disagree. In other states, people can be removed from the criminal justice system to outpatient civil commitment, where they are required to take their medication and they're monitored. The goal is to balance public safety and personal liberty. But there are some key public safety tools that have been removed from the state of Maine. So I just want to provide some background on what I'm witnessing. I serve on the mental health docket, so I see the process and I see the holes.
Please.
When prosecutors ask state forensics, how many times have you evaluated a person? I have heard as high as 23. What this means is 23 different forensic evaluations for one person to determine whether or not that person is competent to go to trial in 23 separate criminal events. That is a lot of resources that are being placed into the criminal justice system that is not solving the problem. What we need to understand is those struggling with having a home are often lacking resources that are more than just a place to sleep. At least 80% are struggling also with a substance misuse or mental illness or even both. So the reality in Maine is, no, not all, but there's a high percentage.
Please, listen. I'm moderating this. I want my presenters to get their opinions out or their information out, and then we'll have an opportunity for others.
So, but what we never did when we closed the mental health facilities that we had, where there were abuses and they needed to be closed as a result, we never opened the small community-based facilities that were promised. We never put the resources there. So,
Listen, if
No,
people are
jails
going
are
to
very
continue to interrupt,
expensive.
I'm going to ask you to leave the room. You can go upstairs and watch it, but I
Yeah.
don't want the interruptions for the presenters, please.
So, and just to, jail is extremely expensive for the state. We don't have for-profit prisons in Maine, so jails impact all of our taxes, and it's very expensive. It's not profitable at all. So there is nothing in Maine state law that requires people to take their medication in the civil system so that they don't come into the criminal system. So we don't have to have them in the criminal system. So I also serve on the ad hoc legislative committee studying the hole in the civil code that is pushing those with mental illness into the criminal code. As a member of this task force, we're seeking a law change to require that we can have something just to require people to take their medication but still be in the community. So as prosecutors, we see ourselves as the protectors of the community. Nobody likes to be the parent to say, hey, party's over, time to go to bed, but that is literally my job, because what I'm seeing right now is that our community is not safe. The most horrific violence I've seen this year has included those from the unhoused community. It is a small percentage, but it is horrific. It includes a gross sexual assault on an 82-year-old woman on the Augusta Rail Trail, an aggravated assault against 3 young women enjoying the Book Nook on Water Street, and a stabbing of a person in the face in Waterville just a few days ago. So this has to stop. And what we need to have is something short of institutionalization, which we already have in the books, which is Maine's PTP law, which is the Progressive Treatment Program. We need to expand access to that program so that people can get the treatment that they need, and we won't have people entering into the criminal system. Because while certainly no, not everyone who is unhoused has mental illness, the people who are entering into the criminal justice system that I'm seeing have that combination. So I do want to make that clear. That's the difference, is that I'm seeing the ones where there is that combination, or a combination with substance use. And that is what I would like to see, something short of a criminal justice response to enable our government to say, you simply have to take your medication and you have to treat what, needs to be treated.
Doesn't that wind up with drug court, which is what we have now?
Well, drug courts are criminal courts, right? So that's, again, bringing someone into the criminal system. And what would, in my opinion, be better,
Can you let her answer her question?
yeah.
We'll let her answer.
Well, and we do have a lot of resources in the criminal system. In fact, I have somebody right now who tried to get into treatment, was unsuccessful, this is in Somerset County, unsuccessful in being able to get treatment, committed a crime, and now she's in my drug court in Somerset County getting the treatment that she needed. Wouldn't it be better if she could have gotten the treatment and didn't have to commit a crime to be able to get the treatment? So that's what I would like to see.
Treatment, not this cyclical harm reduction bullcrap that I think, that the officer right there, when he said, everything exploded since the opioid and I almost fell over. I said, you go say settlement. And then you went opioid crisis, right? And it's a Freudian slip, right? But I heard it, I think everybody else heard it too. The opioid settlement funds, I think, is part of the problem exacerbating it. And I don't want to interrupt too much, but I think that needs to be looked at.
You'll have a chance.
Oh, ma'am, please, it's a forum,
Listen.
there's a moderator, you're not it.
Listen, all right, time out. All right, so we've been through our panelist presentations, all right. Thank you. Good very much. So, no, please. We're at the portion of our agenda where I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. It's not the time for a speech. It's the time to take advantage of the expertise and experience of these folks on the panel to ask questions of them that may be on your mind. Only after we've been through that, then we'll go into the, an open comment period. But let's get the questions and answers out first that you have on your mind. It's not a time to lecture or specify. Okay, then I will make sure you get called upon so you can answer a question. Now I'm going to ask the chief. He's going to help me he's going to, or someone's going to help me, they're going to have a microphone, and he's going to go around the audience with the microphone so that your questions can be picked up for people in the room and watching. And I think we're ready to do that now. So who, would you like the first question? Okay.
So, my question for you is, I'm loud enough, I promise. So you just pointed out specific events and blamed like the horrific crimes on the homeless community. But the part you didn't touch on is before they were even called. It was our community that jumped in to help those people. Like, you sit there and you point the finger at us, but yet we also deal with that too. You guys overlook that part. You try to criminalize everything. We're criminals because we're on the street and we do this and do that. But why aren't you quick to be like, hey, it was the homeless people that jumped in and helped them girls that were getting raped to begin with, before that guy even got called? You know, if we're not just a bunch of criminals. You know what I mean? Like, there's a couple of them that are mentally unstable, and if you think we don't know who they are, and we don't have a way to take care of them ourselves, we're the ones out here taking care of them when your system spits them out. You know what I mean? So how can you point your finger and be like, oh, it's a medication thing? It's not just a medication thing. That's your Band-Aid putting it on it, is it not?
So for the cases that I see, there's a nexus between needing mental health help or needing some substance misuse help. Those are the cases that I see. But when I was a kid, I lost my home and I ended up living in the low-income housing project in Lewiston. So I certainly would never say that everyone who doesn't have a home, I mean, that was me when I was a kid. I didn't have a home, and we got a place in the housing project, and I'm incredibly grateful. But what we have happening now is not safe for anybody. It's not safe for the people who are living on the street or for the people who are interacting with people living on the street. We can't have the status quo. The status quo is just incredibly dangerous. And you're right, I also had another case that I didn't mention where it was one homeless person who stabbed another homeless person. So, and actually, I have more than one of those. But so it's dangerous for everybody. And the status quo can't continue because too many people are being harmed, and they're being harmed in really horrific ways, and that can't continue.
All right, just a reminder, when you have a turn to speak, to identify yourself, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Homeless community, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy.
Yeah, right there.
Doug Papa, Augusta, Maine. Chief, I have a question for you. The prestigious District Attorney, Megan Maloney, say that she needs more information. Now, I'm sure you possibly get some information about how these fine people in our audience can provide information to you via mail or phone or whatever, so she can have that evidence to prosecute those cases. Would you like to elaborate on that, Chief?
Sure. We have actually a couple. I mean, there's several different venues that people can report crimes in. Sometimes we have folks that just want to be anonymous. And again, we work with the DA's office when those folks come here, because that is a true reality for many of us. You may not want to have to testify in court, and you may not want your identification known, that you're the person who's calling in for help. So we can work with them. What we end up doing is we offer out both we have what's called Tip 411. It's an anonymous tip line. It's an app that you can have on your phone or your computer, and you can report in. It's 100% anonymous. What we do is, if those tips come in through that, our dispatcher automatically gets a call. They create a login or a call number associated to that, and they dispatch an officer to check that out. Now, if something happens that we don't have the name of the person who's calling, we can still send that case to court. We just know that that is a key component to have an independent witness that's available to testify at a later date. We know that the district attorney's office can struggle sometimes with having those trials because, again, and anybody could call in at any time, right? That's the alleged argument. But what we do is we just provide everything to include the computer printout of the call that came in, how it came in to us, the fact that the person specifically said that they did not want to be identified for fear of retribution, and then we submit the case in nonetheless. Did I answer your question, sir? Thanks, sir.
Mr. Clardy.
William Clardy, resident of Augusta, and just wanting to point out, and this may make me a unicorn amongst most of the folks attending this meeting, but there are really two homeless problems here in Augusta. One is the one this panel is heavily weighted to answer, or not answer, but address, which is the economically disadvantaged, people in need of assistance, community that the current statutory limits seem to leave us with a little more than sweeping them from one place to another like a pile of dust that you're trying to sweep up without a dustpan. But there's another homeless crisis within Augusta for what I suspect is a larger portion of the population, because the visually offensive homeless, or the part of the homeless population we see and everybody complains about, is, I suspect, a single-digit percentage of our population. There's also the young employed Augustans who cannot afford a home that is unsubsidized. So, can the people who have trouble keeping their mouths closed kind of zip it until these folks get a chance to answer? How much attention has the city put into addressing that side of the problem? You hear from all the suppliers and the people talking about the downtrodden and the folks who need all the subsidy and all the help and all the resources, but how about recruiting people who find answers and ways to build something that will give folks who have a job and are just wanting to start working their way up that life arc a starter home, a place they can rent for a reasonable rent? And the two blue shirts at the end are the only ones I think that really have any say in that question.
Well, if you're talking about the housing component, and
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody knows that there's a housing crisis around the state of Maine. We're thousands and thousands of units short of where we need to be. The city's not going to be in the business of building residences themselves. We try to make ourselves available to developers and cooperate with them in every way we can. It's a matter of do they want to make the investment to take the risk of building? They have to account for the cost of building, a return on their investment. We do have an active code enforcement group who does their best to make sure that the housing that is available is safe to live in. That's sometimes an issue too. So we prioritize housing. We're trying to do things with our land use ordinance to make it easier to build, to kind of streamline, to accommodate infill housing and accessory dwelling units. There's no quick answer to building housing supply, but we try. It's the best I can.
Yeah,
tell you.
and I would just add to that too is exactly the reason affordability, the biggest reason is the lack of housing stock, right? Prices are up with housing. So it's been the council's goal for the last 2 to 3 years is to get as much housing as we can get in the city. As the mayor indicated, different levels, we'll take any housing and to make it as easy as possible for development. We use tax increment financing to spur these types of housing, and that's the whole idea is there's no $150,000 home anymore, right? We need to get back to those days, and the only way to do that is to have more housing stock, so then you have those lower levels and it drives the price down. So supply and demand is the biggest thing, and that's what we can do the most on the local level, is to get as much housing as possible on all levels to get to that point. So. Yeah, and, no, and that's obviously an issue too. This was more of a question about housing and affordability for other groups is what we were answering, so.
So,
Who do you want next?
please, please.
One at a time.
So, how many houses do you think you could build, like housing units, affordable, you guys call affordable, but it take 2, 3 people just to afford it on a regular basis? Yeah, pretty much. Could you build for the price of the new police station, the new courthouse, shit that wasn't really needed, you know? The raises that you guys gave yourselves, did that go through like a vote? Did that go through a vote for the people? You gave yourself
All
a
right.
60% raise, man.
So you got a lot in there, okay?
Well, no, I mean, just how much? Where's the money going?
Where does the money go? So, we have, the city council consists of elected representatives of the people from the city, both at large and citywide. We are entrusted with, setting policy and looking out for the betterment of the community, including setting the budget. The budget is very transparent. If someone wants to find out what's in the budget, all they have to do is make a little effort. And we were more transparent this year than we have ever been with respect to our budget and publicizing the information. Nobody gave anybody 60% raises. With respect to the police station, I humbly disagree with you. It was very necessary in this community. I don't know whether you are familiar with the condition of the police station that used to be down on Union Street, but it was virtually inhabitable. The decision to build a new police station was put out to a public vote in the city of Augusta, and the residents of the city of Augusta approved the building of the new police station. So there's a difference of opinion about whether you think it was necessary or not. All right. All right, is there another question? Matt, you got someone back there?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Erin. I'm an Augusta resident. Just related to the housing, I understand capitalism alive and strong, especially under our federal administration. But at a city level, I know that there are cities in the state of Maine who put rental caps, so rents can't rise to an exorbitant amount. I understand supply and demand and all that. Has the city ever considered maybe having some rental caps so landlords?
Please do not interrupt.
Excuse me?
Please do not interrupt.
Okay, I don't need a white man to interrupt me, thank you. So, I would like to ask the city council my question, thank you. Is there ever been any discussion on that? So rent isn't going through the roof and people can't afford their rent.
The closest that the council has come to a discussion about it, that is we've heard a presentation about rent stabilization with respect to mobile home parks in the city of Augusta. To date, there hasn't been an appetite on the part of the majority of the council to adopt that, although I understand that there may be a citizens initiative underway to do that. But we've had no discussion, and I don't know of any appetite to impose rent controls throughout the entire city. Thank you.
Okay, no,
In front here, and then
Okay,
we'll go,
and then we'll
then
go
we'll go
here.
there.
Hi, I'm Jane Whiteside. I'm from Augusta, and I was upstairs talking about the food restaurant safety, and I know about the loitering concern, and I talked about, you know, a number of places having 50 on the Lexus report. But I was just, you know, this is more to the behavioral part, not so much the housing, because we know the housing is a real concern, and that's also out in the country. But what, maybe to put things in a little bit more positive way, maybe interactions with people who are homeless. what is the training for people in like restaurants and facilities, like fast food restaurants? Have you looked into anything to help? Because to have a bad, it's important to center yourself if you're a restaurant employee, and I don't know what the interactions are, and if the interactions with employees and people who are either frustrated or just because, or also even more of a concern, which they cannot, a restaurant employee, you cannot handle is some sort of mental health crisis, or they're not a healthcare worker, but how are you addressing sort of working on that gap for training? Because maybe that's been worked at in other towns or cities, I don't know. Thank you.
Is that directed to the police chief,
Yeah.
or, okay.
So I can honestly tell you, I've never partnered with a restaurant before to set up their trainings. I can tell you that if they do run into a situation that they don't feel comfortable handling at their establishment or on the property, we receive phone calls, like I said earlier, about 125 per day on most days. But we get a call from a lot of different property owners who might have questions about the legalities of either somebody who's on the property and they prefer not be, or the activities that are engaged there, or crimes that may be taking place. If somebody's looking for resources on de-escalation and how to bridge those communication gaps, we do have resources that we can provide them. It's nothing that the city provides, but there are some web-based and private sector things that we can provide them. But again, my apologies, but I have no background with having done that with a restaurant directly before.
Hello. I'd like to piggyback what the gentleman over here and this young lady were saying about.
Could you let us know who you are and where you're from?
Oh, hey, sorry. I'm Rachel Robbins, and I'm an Augusta resident. And I should preface this by saying, not all landlords, but yeah, it's about the house, right? It's about the housing crisis and about how to get people to have a place to be. I mean, I feel like a lot of this has been directed at the homeless community. And having had people in my family who have been unhoused and trying to get them on their feet and seeing that it can take up to $6,000 to get people into an apartment, a small apartment, like a single father and his kids, say. And I'm talking about like first, last, and security. And yes, guys, I know we're not talking about Hollowell, we're talking about Augusta. But I'm just talking about people who want to get up and out and who don't necessarily want to get on the system and want so badly to have that independence. And a lot, again, not all out-of-staters, a lot of these places are being purchased, large buildings, by people from out of state. And the landlords are not keeping up the places. They're doing a quick little makeover and bumping the rent up 3 times. And it's not good, and it's just really hard to help out our families. And I just wondered if you could speak to that, because it's so frustrating. And there's people we love who are just trying so hard. And if there's any ideas, and thank you guys all for being here. I love that this community cares, and thank you, every single one of you, even though we have differences of opinions. It's beautiful. Thank you. And thank you guys. It's wonderful. Thank you.
And I don't have a good answer to how to solve that problem. It's a supply and demand.
I know, somebody said that, and I hear that, but it's so frustrating. And the same thing with bed and breakfast, people buying these giant homes that are sitting empty, and yeah, no, I don't want to take up a lot of people's times, but it is a frustrating situation that we do have places that are sitting empty and that we have places that are being bought out, and, our main residents are being overcharged. And, again, there's people who are working so hard and just can't get that $6,000 together to get a 1-bedroom apartment, for, like this single father and son that I'm thinking of in particular. So, anyway, thank you for listening, guys.
All right.
Sorry to unload.
We're still on questions. Okay, we got someone with them.
All right, my name's Adam Shriver, and I'm one of the homeless here in Augusta. And I just wanted to know, where are we getting our numbers for the amount of homeless people? Because last summer, just summer alone, I went around town helping people out, so I got a better number of the numbers. We went from 200 to 500, but yet you guys only have 125. And some of those numbers are people that have homes, like live efficiencies.
All right, so I'm going to ask Earl, because in the past, you've had somewhat of a handle on the numbers that you think exist, and maybe Dawn does too, I don't know, but.
I know that once a year, there's, I think it's Kennebec Behavioral Health, they go out, I believe it's in January, and they do an inventory of, and they comb the streets at night, and they do an inventory of all the homeless folks. The only way that I get my numbers are the folks that try to come through general assistance or through some of the other agencies that are working with some of the folks that are homeless. If some of the homeless folks do not come to to general assistance, or they don't try to seek help through the agencies, I don't have any way to get an accurate number of the folks that are out there.
And in terms, please,
Dawn, do you have a better
In terms
answer?
of-
Do you have another answer?
The count you're talking about is the pit count, and it's done, it's a HUD. And it is very inaccurate because they pick, it used to be one night, one of the coldest nights of the year, so it's a very skewed way to collect information. And in the wintertime, people do their best to find other places to be, so it isn't an accurate way to count the homeless population. I agree with you, we don't have a good, and part of that is because it's a marginalized population, and there are people who choose not to come into the city proper and be counted, so. Yeah, and
They don't usually go combing the streets like we said that one time. Nobody comes down there with a clipboard, counting our heads, counting that's what we need. That don't happen. But Dawn and them did actually go out and like, and they talk to the people. Like, I didn't use the phone for I was. I came in for 3 showers on Saturday evening. I slept in a tent in the city hall room. Didn't know that.
Nope.
Exactly like room. And I was in the middle of the city. I was sitting on the bridge.
all right, let's continue with the questions. Matt, right here in front.
So, since the passing of LD 1478, have you seen an increase or a decrease in homelessness?
Let us know who you are.
Yeah.
where you're
Oh,
from.
Nicholas Blanchard, Augusta resident.
I really don't know if it's related to the LD itself or the totality of circumstances around the date that LD was passed. The opioid epidemic has had a huge impact on our unhoused population, as I mentioned earlier. When I was a rookie officer, we probably 15 or 20 people, and we knew them all. Now we have a perpetual, I don't want to say an influx, but more like a recycling almost. Other neighboring communities who offer services like Augusta will have common consumers. Waterville, I use as the example. I speak with Chief Bill Bonner often, and a lot of the programs that they offer, we offer as well. The names, as we're comparing different names and different resources that are available, we try to keep similar trends because typically what impacts us will impact them as well.
And resources you mean by handing them needles and what everything else what would be considered paraphernalia if someone like me that has a house was caught with?
No, I'm talking on the police side. The resources that we're talking about are programs.
Like
now,
what?
Now, I'm not saying that there's not resources that are available in Augusta, but the resources I'm talking about are, and I use Dawn as my example. As a non-police officer, she has connectivity to not only population, but to different services that are offered through nonprofit organizations, private sector organizations. We partner with them to set these folks up for different services that they may need. As the police side of it, we do try to remain kind of autonomous in this because a lot of the times when you influence the police into these situations, the folks that are in need of the services may not necessarily want them. And we certainly don't want to create a situation where by infusing the police, that it causes folks to either hide, withdraw, or become recluse. And therefore, especially in the wintertime, you're just talking about how bad this winter was, and certainly agree. If those services were not available and if it was only up to the police department, folks would certainly avoid us, and people would have been dying probably on a daily basis.
Well, I would suggest everybody go, I don't know if you know who Spencer Pratt is, but he's running for mayor out in California, and he actually put out like a 15-minute video to tackle the homelessness, the opiate crisis, and all that. But I kind of want to piggyback to what William was also saying, where he asked about, you know, people that are working, that are, you know, one paycheck away from being homeless. You know, you say you're building affordable housing, but people like, you know, me, that's in that category, that, you know, make $20 and up, that still is not enough. We can't get help because, you know what, we have a job. So we're not going to be able to get into those affordable housings because we work. So how is that helping us? And then to kind of piggyback, you know, with renters and why rent's so high, didn't we just vote at the last city council to increase taxes? So, I mean, how are you going to cap the landlord and tell them they have to eat up what they're paying in property taxes?
Nancy, did you have your hand up earlier? All right, Matt, Nancy.
I actually had, Nancy Fritz, citizen in Augusta. I actually had two questions. One's for Earl. When you were speaking earlier, you talked about GA, general assistance, and probably 3 times you mentioned if someone qualifies. So my question is, what does it mean to qualify for general assistance? So that's my question for you. And the other one's for Dawn. And a lot of the work I did over the years before I retired was around homelessness. And one of the things I learned from around the country is if we provide supportive, permanent housing for folks who are experiencing chronic homelessness, it makes a huge difference in every community, not only for those individuals, but for the rest of the community. So my question of you, Dawn, is do you have any idea how many people in Augusta would fit the definition of chronic homelessness? They've been homeless a long time and they need supportive services. So do we need 25 units? Do we need 125 units? So those are my 2 questions, one for Earl, one for Dawn.
Thanks, Nancy. So the first answer is, with general assistance, qualifying for general assistance is income qualifying. The Department of Human Services set the rates and the standards for maximum what you're allowed to earn. I will say, I don't set these maximums, but they're low. Somebody earning, I believe, $985 a month would qualify for housing assistance, for food assistance, for electric assistance, for heating assistance, but I don't set those rates. But those are the qualifying rates. For a family of 1, it's $985. For a family of 2, it's $991. For a family of 3, it's $1,276. Those are the guidelines that are given to us and what we have to follow per the state guidelines. What disqualifies somebody is somebody that may have qualified for this, but somebody that's not following the rules or can't follow the rules. And typically, it's job searches. If somebody doesn't follow the required amount of job searches, then they're disqualified. Right. Social Security income for the Department of Human Services guidelines is qualifying income. 996. And the guideline is the guideline's 985. 996. I can't. Yep. I don't.
John, do you want to, and make sure you use your microphone too.
So I could probably come up with a number, but I think another important piece of information would be who identifies themselves that way and who would be willing to accept the housing if it was provided to them. What you're talking about is a housing first model, and my understanding is there is some of this coming online here in Augusta and should be ready in the next 5 years, which doesn't really.
No, much quicker than that. They'll be
we'll see.
breaking ground this year, yeah.
So, I mean, I could give you an estimate, but I don't know how helpful that estimate would be. I mean, I know of about 125 homeless people in Augusta. But like Adam said, I don't know of all of them, so I don't know how we would accurately count that unless they stepped up and said, I want housing.
All right, do we have someone up here? Yep. I think he has.
I'm very good at speaking. My name is Mac Emery. I'm living here in Augusta. I'm a resident and homeless also. I got a question for the city. Is why did they have picnic tables about a week ago down by the trestle where there's no trespassing? They put them there for 2 hours, and they decided to take them out, and to take them out of Mill Park. Is there well, it's a non-trespassing, it's a trespassing area. Why did they put the picnic tables there? That's what I can't understand.
The picnic tables were put there inadvertently. They were not supposed to be put there at that time. That's something I'm working on right now with Danny with the at the Edwards Inn to get them put in a place, but they were not supposed to be put there at that time. That's something I'm still working through right now. At Mill Park, we only have so many picnic tables, and we move the picnic tables around as other events are being used in different parks.
I mean, I would say that if that was that day that they got, then yeah, no, encourage them to come forward and we'll talk to them, but, and look at that. I don't know if the chief knows anything that happened with that, but I wasn't aware that a bunch of people got trespassed where the picnic tables were. Okay, yeah.
Reach out to me at the police department. I'm the only Kevin there. Yep, and have them reach out to me. Yeah. Earl will have the dates, and so we can definitely coordinate those. So, good question.
Up on the left, yeah. Yeah.
My name is Chris. I volunteer at a lot of centers. I work with the unhoused as an unhoused member as well. My question is for Mr. Kingsbury. Why at 22, if someone doesn't have a parent signature, that they can't qualify when they're working to get assistance through general assistance?
That's a state of Maine DHS guideline.
And when they're also unhoused?
That's just it's a state of Maine DHS guideline.
Matt?
Thank you. My name's Timothy Bodner, and I'm from St. Albans, and I go by @TruthSlingerX on X and Facebook. And a lot of concerned citizens have come to me, and I've obviously gotten involved in Augusta politics, and many people would ask me, why in the world did you get involved with Augusta politics? Well, it's because I care. Believe it or not, I actually do care. And so the question I have for you is, someone brought me a pile of trespasses. This is a business, it's the same business. This is over a couple of year period of time. It's been over 90. This is just a partial stack of trespasses. What do you tell Dunkin' Donuts? And how long do you think Dunkin' Donuts is going to stay open with this kind of, I mean, and what do you tell the owner? I guess, so I would ask the chief. And the second thing is, considering the fact that we have limited police resources, okay? And the district attorney is here as well, and I know it's criminal that you do, not civil, but I don't get an opportunity to get your opinion very often. How do you feel about, oh, I don't know, anti-SLAPP lawsuits, or using the police as a public intimidation tool because there are people, citizen journalists, like me and Nick Blanchard, wanting to look into and just have transparency about some things to make sure that we really are certainly addressing the problem as promised by the people that have sold us what I believe to be a bill of goods. But now we have a personal protection order because someone is merely asking questions. I didn't get one. I went in and toured the MERAP Center. So I guess that question is, how do you feel when there's a woman who was bruised up, battered, busted up, and I've been the victim of many temporary restraining orders because of this same thing. So I'm asking, is it appropriate and is it good use of public police time when we have all these other things we should be doing to be scanning people's cars with tracking devices and just trying to shut down citizen journalism? Thank you very much for having this forum, all of you.
There was a lot there. Was there a specific question you wanted me to address first?
Well, yeah, I think the first one is, what do you tell Dunkin' Donuts? You said keep call, but, you gotta get call. And they're calling. And the second one is, what do you feel about government officials or politicians using police and legal mechanisms to shut down investigative journalism? I don't know if you realize the age. This is the age of the Nick Shirley. This is us. We're here. The barbarians are at the gate. We're not always going to play by every single little rule. I believe in a different level of civility than y'all do. Okay? I believe true civility has been lost because we've shut down public speech for so long and people are frustrated. That's not civility. I think we're actually getting back to a place of civility now. But do you think it's okay for Courtney Garrett Allen to have a temporary restraining order against this guy because he was just asking
All right,
questions about Narcan?
That's kind of irrelevant to our discussion.
Is it? Is it really?
I think so.
Well, MERAP is at the center of all this homelessness and this cyclical drug addiction thing, so I don't think so at all.
Okay. So I'm going to let the chief try to answer as best he can.
So to answer your first question, when it comes to Dunkin' Donuts, they're private property. So they have the same rights that any of us would have at our homes or our private businesses. So if they have folks that are on their property that are non-conducive or behaving in a way that's not conducive to business practices or not following the rules that they have for the store that, again, encourages good business practices, they have the rights, just like us, to have people removed and or trespassed. Now, that's a large stack of paperwork that you have there, and we have served a lot of trespass notices over the past year, 2 years, 3 years, not just to Dunkin' Donuts. We receive a lot of calls. We don't have the right to discern whether we're going to come to your house, but not my house and not somebody else's house. When people call with a valid complaint, in this case we'll call it trespassing, loitering, littering, whatever the call may come in at, we have a duty to respond. Once we get there, then the officers are tasked with the opportunity to investigate as to whether or not there's actually a crime that's taken place. Is there an ordinance that's being violated? Or is it just that the property owner themselves want us to follow up with those orders? And so, no, not all of them. I can't say for, well,
Let him answer for why.
do you want the answer? Okay, so those are trespass notices. Those are not protection from harassment, protection from, those are just notices. What that does is that we serve that as a tool that we're giving, you'll always use my name. Kevin Lally is has been warned for trespassing because they either did not want to leave the property when we asked them to do so, and the store did not want them back. So we serve the trespass notice. That's in place for 1 year. If they don't violate it, they never have to go to court. Only if they violate it, go against the order that they've been served in hand, then they would have to potentially go to court. We would either summons them if they violate the order in our presence, so we respond there, and before they have an opportunity to leave, they're still there in the presence. They could effectively be arrested, not just summoned. But with those notices, if those notices are as you show, then yes, the store has the right to ask for those, and then they can have those for, again, they cannot exceed 1 year. But they only have to go to court if they violate them. Answer your question, sir?
No,
Yes, sir.
no. I'm looking for someone who hasn't asked a question yet. Is there anybody who hasn't asked a question that would like to, in the back? And then we'll come here. Up here in the back row. Jared. Second one in.
Yeah, for you, Mrs. Maloney. You had mentioned some things you were looking into that were being practiced in other states, solutions to prevent people from entering into the system in the first place. Do you have any models?
Massachusetts has some great models for us, but we also have the start of something. It's called the Progressive Treatment Program. It's really hard to get, and so people who are in crisis often end up at the hospital. If the hospital decides to pursue civil commitment, that person can end up housed at the hospital for months. I've even seen up to a year. So the hospital has a really hard decision to make when they're trying to say, are we going to civilly commit someone? Because all of the beds, our priority is given to those in the criminal system, not in the civil. So I had a case where it's someone who is not homeless, so not completely relevant, but he went to the hospital because he was in mental health crisis, was stabilized. If you're stabilized for within 48 hours, if you can be given medication and then there's no longer a mental health crisis, our laws in Maine don't allow anything else to happen. So he was released, he was given a prescription, no funds to fill that prescription, went home, and then later that night, it was one of the most brutal rapes I've ever seen as far as a stranger breaking into someone's home in the city of Waterville. He asked for help. He didn't get any help other than to stabilize him and given a prescription. So what I'd like to see in Maine, because I see the worst of the worst. So to be clear, I'm not seeing, when the crimes that I'm seeing are truly horrifying to me, and I wish they didn't happen. And what I'm seeing again and again is people needing assistance, and we need state laws that allow us to say, this person's in crisis. This is not someone who can decide for him or herself whether or not medication would be helpful. And all we have is civil commitment, which is such a huge hammer, now we're gonna institutionalize you, or wait till someone commits a crime. Why can't we instead have, like Massachusetts has, expand our progressive treatment program and enable people to get the help that they need, but remain in the community? So that's what I was looking at.
All right.
That's the name of the law in Maine. It's the Progressive Treatment Program. Yes. Well, it does. It's also called green paper, so it has different names. So that it might be that I'm using a little bit of jargon, so I apologize for that. People mostly refer to it as a PTP. So they usually refer to it by its initials, so that might be more familiar if anyone's heard this. But the problem is it's just very difficult to get. So I've also heard from parents where they see their child living on the street, not getting help, and they say, what can I do? And there's nothing. There's no way for them to go to court to say, my child is acting in all these ways. And when I say child, an adult, right? And I see that adult, young adult, coming through our caseload again and again, but as soon as he's on his medication, we won't see him for a year. And then it's once the PTP in Maine can only be for a year. And so once he finally gets to a place where that can be put in place, we don't see him for a year, and he's doing great. But then it goes away, it can't be renewed. There's no one to help the family renew them, and then he's right back into the criminal justice system. So he's being hurt, and our community is being really hurt as well.
So really what I'm hearing across the board is we need new legislation here. So in order to get new legislation here, we're going to have to flip this state red, because we have been under Democratic leadership now for way too long, and we haven't had this amount of homelessness, drug use, you name it. Overdoses, yes. So legislation needs to change that. Sorry? Absolutely. Right. So this harm reduction.
Stop.
Right. So to get back to my point, so we need new legislation, and in order to bring new change, we have to have new change in leadership. That means vote red in November. Thank you.
All right. More questions? And next to, you'll be next.
Wyatt Bully, I live in Augusta. The town code seems to allow the council to establish drug-free zones, specific safe zones in any public area frequented by minors. Have all the parks in Augusta been designated as these zones? And is it possible to designate areas of Water Street as one of these zones?
The parks have been designated, and I'm not aware that, I thought it's specific to parks is what we have designated. It's part of the state law, then you can pass an ordinance. We passed it a long time, we passed it a long time ago, so we could look at it again. I mean, these have been around for a decade, and it was something passed by the legislature that we're able to pass an ordinance, so we can look at that, but all of our parks are drug-free zones.
Matt, in the glasses next to former Mayor Stokes.
Hi, Amanda Heath, Augusta resident. I was just wondering if there are any programs that we have available in the city of Augusta that provide day services for our homeless neighbors, and not necessarily like drug treatment sort of services, but just a place to be, especially during any time of the year. But I mean, shelters, they shelter them overnight, and then they're kicked out 7 o'clock in the morning, the coldest part of the day oftentimes. And then as we're all like headed out to work, we like see everybody shivering and trying to find a warm place. So are there places like that, and is there a plan to expand that?
Dawn can answer that question.
Yeah, so there's a number of resources in the city of Augusta. I think that attracts people because there are places to go. So the library is heavily utilized, the Link Center, which is on Memorial Drive, UCLC on Spruce Street, and
Please let her answer the question.
the Access Center. Bread of Life has the soup kitchen that's open in the daytime. So I believe that's pretty much what is available. It is 4 or 5 different locations that people can go, and they alternate and support one another so that their schedules overlap.
Right in the middle there.
Hi, my name is Nash Callahan. I'm a resident of Augusta. I also own Capital City Cycles right on the corner of Water Street. I'm a little sad that we're having another one of these meetings here. I have a few questions, but I'm going to kind of interlace them with some of my experiences of being a downtown business owner and a longtime Augusta resident. My business that I started was started with my own money. I've lived here. I've worked very hard. I know a lot of people in the community. I know a lot of people in this room. I think we are letting down both the taxpayers of Augusta, and we're also letting down the homeless residents of Augusta. Augusta has been making it very, very difficult for both parties to really have a constructive civic environment. We've been talking about the unhoused issue now for a couple of years. We've funded a task force, which the city council has seemed to have ignored until it became an issue for them. And then a moratorium on shelters was placed. Having watched the planning board meeting the other night where they discussed the new possible land ordinance changes, I was a little disturbed that they do not seem to potentially be taking in the city's attorney's opinions. So I'm wondering how difficult it will be to actually get anybody to give a proposal for a shelter run on city land. I've had my store surrounded twice by emergency vehicles because people have OD'd right in front of it. I've heard a lot of talk about how we need to get economic development into Augusta. I'm someone trying to build that economic development, but when people can't access my store, how is that going to drive other people to want to come build that economy? The reputation of downtown Augusta is being destroyed because we have not acted as a city to make it any better. The unhoused who are actively using don't have anywhere to go. That is unfortunate for them, and they wish that they weren't using, but unfortunately that is their choice, but they do need somewhere to go. And right now they don't have anywhere to go. So we need to provide somewhere for them to go. So I'd like to know what are the next steps, because that's something that I haven't heard anyone up here discuss, is what's going to change, because I would not like to see the status quo, because the status quo is not working. I think that is something that everyone in this room can agree upon, is what we have right now isn't working. So I think we need to come together as a community to really figure out a solution. You know, we have all of our civic leaders in this room for this town, and, you know, I'd really like to see them take some a very active approach. Anybody who wants to come see what's going on downtown, set a chair up on my four-way right there. I see just about everything. Near traffic crashes, ODs, fights, it's all right there. Feel free to pop a chair up in the front of my store. So I'd really like to know, what do you want the change to look like? You're our civic leaders. Ryan, you know, you're a city councilor. You've been on our school boards and stuff like that. You set the tone as the mayor. You set the items on the agenda. So how do you want to make our economy better when, you know, we have problems like this? Because I don't see it really happening in the scenario that we have right now in our town. And what do you want us to do as business owners? I can't tell you how many people that I have to deal with that my heart breaks. Something I've noticed in the unhoused population recently is a shift in the age demographic. It is shifting to a much younger demographic, and that's really, really scary. I'm talking people that are much younger than I am. I had a young gentleman come in, and his bike doesn't have a front brake on it. He didn't have the money for a tire. His tire popped, and he was carrying a large 4-person tent on his bike that was way overloaded. And he was trying to find a place for him and his girlfriend to go stay tonight that he wasn't going to get harassed. I gave him a tire. I had a customer pay for his tube who was there and was very kind. I would have given him the tube had no one paid for it, because that's what I want to do is to my community, is be there for them. And a lot of the people I deal with, their bike is their transportation. We don't have public transportation, and that's pathetic as the capital. We have put our economic centers in the farthest points away from the center of town where people are living, so people can't even get to jobs sometimes. So I see a lot of people who are choosing to spend their last money on fixing something up that is barely running because that is their only transportation. I will try to help them for that. I'm doing my part as a business owner, but I really want to know what the city is doing and what our civic leaders are doing, because I'm tired of pulling more weight than I feel like I need to. So, thank you.
Well, I led off the meeting reciting a lot of the different things that have happened and are happening now. I don't want to go over them again. I'll tell you, the budget season was tough, but for me personally, my service as mayor, nothing has given me more sleepless nights than contending with the issues and challenges of the homeless. And maybe we come out of here with some great answers, but I don't have all the answers. We try different things. We are We're trying to facilitate the ability for low barrier shelter to be established in the city. The pace of things may not be satisfactory to people, but that is the nature of government sometimes. We're not as nimble as private businesses. An example I gave earlier is we were trying to accommodate some supportive housing for the chronically unhoused here in Augusta. That's a step. I don't think that the city has the capacity to stand up and operate a low barrier shelter on its own. We always look for public-private partnerships. One of the things, again, I talked about at the top was the prospect of a request for proposals, see what interest is there out there in terms of partnering with someone to help stand up a low barrier shelter, for example. One of the features of that is we've got a couple of parcels of land in Augusta that the council might decide to contribute towards that effort. With respect to your public transportation, we know that that's an issue. We're trying to deal with it. We had, unfortunately, some of the money that we had set aside for reestablishing some public transportation, we had to cut out of the budget, but we're working on some other alternatives to fund and finance a public transportation system in Augusta. That's under active consideration now. Nothing I can talk about right now, but we've got some options that are going on. So, you know, we're trying to tackle this bit by bit. Sure.
So regarding the RFP that you guys want to put out there, so per my understanding, even if the city were to give that land to someone to use, it would still have to go through a conditional use permit hearing from the planning board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So when the same uproar happens in those neighborhoods, what's the city's plan then?
Ask me that again.
So when the same uproar of taxpayers come to those meetings to not want it in their backyard because it's going to lower their property taxes, although some people now might like their property taxes being lowered, they really, I think, what's the city's plan if those two locations get shot down by the planning board? Has the city even polled residents whether or not they want that in their neighborhood before you offer those plots?
Well, we haven't offered the plot, so
You guys have been pretty public about those plots.
Well, we haven't had a robust discussion at the council level yet, because we're trying to get through the licensing process and the land use changes ordinance, and that's kind of the next logical step. If those two properties that we've kind of identified, because we've kind of taken an account of all the city-owned properties and what will work and what are most likely to work. If those don't work for whomever, there's nothing to say that somebody else can't site or locate or rehab another building somewhere else in the city. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that the city makes available to establish a low-area shelter.
From the discussions I've heard, though, that is what the council, you guys are putting your eggs in that basket. That seemed to be what you guys are supporting.
So I envision that we'll issue a request for proposals for all kinds of ideas. Whoever has an idea about how to go about setting up and establishing a low barrier shelter. It may or may not include an offer of some city-owned property. There may be any number of other ideas that people have. So it's going to be kind of a broad ask to see what to gauge the interest for some kind of public-private partnership. So it's not necessarily tied to those two parcels.
I would just really like to see, before the city put the RFP out, to really find if those locations are going to be feasible, because I think that'd be a waste of a lot of people's time writing a proposal for a location that is still going to need to go through a land use, conditional use hearing. I think that might deter people from having a proposal or not wanting to propose something if there is not a solid location that can be used for it.
So what's the answer then about locating a low barrier shelter? Well, it's a process, and the conditional use process allows for consideration of all things. It's just, I think the current thinking is you just don't automatically let it go wherever a person who wants to develop that housing goes without taking into consideration its suitability for where they propose to go. I mean, it's a process and a balancing.
Just the first part of what you said, I wanted to respond to you. I heard you say that there are assaults outside your store. If you have a camera outside your store, please give that video to law enforcement, and that way I get it. Assaults should always be prosecuted. So I just wanted to respond to that because I absolutely agree. People need to be able to get into your store, and if they're seeing assaults happening outside your store, they're going to be too scared to enter. So cameras are a phenomenal tool. Juries love to see videos. So I'll throw that out there. Well, it's fair.
So Nash, your question brought to mind one point that I wanted to make at some point, and that, you know, we as counselors and the mayor and the city, we get complaints about things, we get photos sent to us and so forth. But in my conversations with the police chief, he says, well, we can't respond to a situation if we don't know about it. And what experience tells me is that for whatever reason, people don't necessarily follow up with the police. They don't think it's going to work. They don't want to be hassled. They don't want to be a witness. The police cannot respond to a situation that they're not aware of. So I would encourage each and every one of you, if you have a circumstance or situation that gives you concern, call the police department. And I don't think, Chief Lully, you'll vouch for that. You won't discourage that at all, will you?
No, actually, we could probably, count, you'd need both hands for all the times that I've asked people at council meetings to specifically call the police department in lieu of reporting it to your counselor or to your neighbor or to your landlord. If you call the police department, we're a 24/7 department, which means we're open every single day and night, 24 hours a day. We have human dispatchers. When you call in, press 0, get you into dispatch, and tell them what's going on. They create a call, they'll have an officer come in and investigate those. So yes, to reiterate, please call the police department if you need help.
All right, yep. We're still going through people for the first
Thank you.
time.
Hi.
So.
My name's Jackie Clark. I raised my family in Augusta, but I live down south in Hollowell now. But I've been active and trying to be useful in the unhoused situation here in Augusta. Thank you for the list you read when we first started. That was very helpful for me to see. I don't hang out on the Augusta website, but I wonder, is there an area on the website, is it there or could it be there, that lists the progress that you're making on this particular issue? And the second question is, with the unhoused task force and then the follow-up group that spent the year following those recommendations, is there a place that we can follow publicly what's being done with each of those recommendations?
That's a good question. I know the initial work is posted on the website, the final report of the task force, and I think probably the appointments of the committee. I don't know whether he wants to say something. I don't know whether we're tracking it or how well we're updating it on our website.
And the answer to that is we're not updating that website on your specific question. We've given updates to counselors and what's been happening, but we could do a better job with that. So I'll make a note with Haley to see what we can do. Right. Correct. Yes, we could update something like that on our website.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, that was actually one of the recommendations of the task force as well, was to have that up on the website with, so that is something that we'll work on. Yes.
Tobias Parkhurst raised his hand. Tobias Parkhurst.
Oh yeah, right behind you, Matt.
Thanks. Tobias Parkhurst, Augusta resident. I moved to Augusta in 2008 and lived downtown for quite some time. And now I'm a merchant, also a landlord down there. Little bit of an interesting and tricky situation, right? Because of my experience and how long I've been around downtown, you know, you find yourself in this situation where you're kind of complaining about a circumstance, but the people you're complaining with a lot of times are your neighbors. They're people that help you. The unhoused community can't be just lumped in to one group. And I think in our businesses, we've probably had as many situations where the unhoused community has come to our aid in one way or another as we have had issues. And I just want to make that distinction. From my experience, a real change happened with the movement around low barrier services and around harm reduction. I'm not an expert on mental health or addiction or any of that stuff. Anything that I know is just anecdotal based on what I see in front of my business. And I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I think what we're running into as merchants, you know, and when a customer gets their jaw broken on the street, there's a tendency to be scared, you know, and to be worried. I think as the city of Augusta, as a capital city, we need to be in the front. We need to be leadership. We need to be the place that leads the way, not only in treatment, but also affordable housing. And unfortunately, what comes along with that, I think, is an increased responsibility to do that in a way that presents not just good outcomes for one population, but good outcomes for all populations. If we save people, we did a good thing. But if we create an environment that no other community will follow in our footsteps, we didn't do a good thing. What we do needs to be able to be replicated in other communities. I have just a quick letter I want to read, and then I do have a question. My sister's traveling today, and she lives downtown. My name is Sue. I have lived downtown Augusta since 2017 and own 3 properties on the north end of downtown. I want to begin by saying that homelessness is one of the most visible and complex challenges facing our communities. The individuals we see in our streets are human beings deserving of dignity, respect, and opportunities for help. However, compassion requires honesty. What we are witnessing today is not a homelessness issue alone. It is an intersection of homelessness, addiction, untreated mental illness, public safety concerns, and a lack of long-term solutions. When we reduce this discussion to any one of those issues, we fail to address the full reality on our streets. Over the last 3 years, I have personally experienced individuals sleeping in doorways, open public drug use, aggressive behavior, leaving residents unsafe in their own neighborhoods, and business owners struggling to provide welcoming environments for customers and employees. These experiences are not isolated incidents. They are symptoms of a larger challenge that requires a thoughtful response. What concerns me most is that the current situation is failing everyone involved. It is failing residents who expect to feel safe in their neighborhoods. It is failing businesses that invest in our downtown and contribute to our tax base. And most importantly, it is failing the people living on the streets, because allowing individuals to remain trapped in a cycle of addiction, crisis, and instability is not compassion. It is neglect disguised as compassion. A healthy community can hold 2 ideas at the same time. People deserve empathy, and that public spaces must remain safe, accessible, and welcoming for everyone. Those ideas are not in conflict. In fact, they depend on one another. The recent increased patrol presence downtown has demonstrated something important. Visible engagement work. Problems are addressed earlier. Expectations are clearer. Businesses notice the difference. Residents feel safer. That tells me this issue is not unsolvable. What we need is a sustained strategy rather than a seasonal response. We need outreach, treatment, resources, housing pathways, and a consistent downtown presence that can engage people before situations escalate into emergencies. Because the question before us is not whether we care about people experiencing homelessness, the question is whether we care enough to move beyond managing the problem and begin solving it. As a community, we should be capable of both compassion and accountability. In fact, I would argue that real compassion requires accountability. So my question is, how do we move past having this discussion, which we've been having since I've been involved, since 2010 or so? The problem has gotten worse, unfortunately, it almost seems like the more people we help, the bigger the problem appears to be in our community. I don't want the answer to be that we don't help people, but we also need to make sure that we have the kind of environment that people will come and invest in new housing and affordable housing and things like that in our community. If we don't look presentable, if we don't look like a good bet, we'll never get out, we'll never dig ourselves out of this hole. So my question is there any effort, conversation, or thought around a more sustainable situation in terms of a persistent presence in downtown Augusta? We had 2.5 full-time people working for the parking district pre-COVID. Those positions were absorbed by the city. Since COVID, we've had none of that in parking enforcement downtown. I know we're not here to talk about parking, but what those people did, they were not police officers. It wasn't a militarized zone, but they were people that became familiar with the folks on the street and were able to interject. They could call dispatch and say, hey, we got a situation that's about to boil over down here. We need some help. And from my standpoint and from the unhoused folks that I knew at that time, it was helpful. I think we need to be careful about displacing our own population in order to serve a more difficult one. And I think that's maybe where we've gotten. So that's it. Thank you.
So, Chief or Mr. Manager, do you want to address the downtown coverage question?
Sure. If you want to talk about, one thing I was going to add is the Guardian program and what we're exploring alternatively in our discussion we had. So if you want to talk about what you're doing and what we're looking for alternatively.
Sure. In short, great question. We used to have the parking district, and you're right. When I was patrol lieutenant, supervised the 3 people that were assigned to that department, and they did a spectacular job. They knew every face in town. They knew everybody's vehicles. They knew where everybody lived. They knew everybody's characteristics. They knew the folks that were using drugs. They knew the folks that didn't have homes. They were truly that ambassador program that you read about in the newspapers that other communities have. We had it well before our time. We were ahead of our time, if you think about it at that time. Unfortunately, because of cuts, those positions were absolved elsewhere. But in their absence, what we're doing from the police side is, I mentioned earlier when I introduced myself, that we approach our complaints from a 2-pronged approach. If the person that is there needs services, needs help, and is willing to accept it, that's where we employ Dawn. She'll go in lieu of the police, or she'll partner with somebody else, whether it be a nonprofit or a private entity, and they'll help partner to try to provide those services. For the folks that you're describing that are not willing to take those services, that are in fact making people scared. They're fighting in public. They're defecating, urinating. They're having sex in bushes. They are doing things that you would only read about. We are summoning and arresting people. The idea of a summons doesn't really bother some folks in the community to receive it's a citation, right? It's an invitation demanding that you go to court. Once you get arrested, one of the things that we partner with through the DA's office is we try to make sure that when they're arrested, we have bail conditions set. The bail conditions can be a useful tool on our end and can be life-changing, if not catastrophic, for sometimes the recipient, because there are mandatory qualifying contacts and conduct that you have to adhere to, aka no use or consumption of drugs or alcohol, random search and tests, can't commit any other criminal violations. If you do, that violates the bail conditions and automatically gets you reincarcerated at the jail. So what we're doing to try to protect both sides, and I mean both sets of the community, as everybody has mentioned here, it's not 2 different parts of Augusta. It's just 2 different communities that are struggling to find peace with the other. We can't do one without the other. So when Dawn notifies us that she has extended the services, she's exhausted all leads, but again, Kevin Lully is still downtown creating hate and discontent, making people feel uncomfortable and nervous, then the police are going to get involved, and there are going to be court actions that take place. What we've done is we have early detectives that start before the rest of the team does each day. They're downtown sooner than everybody else. They're in plain clothes, unmarked cars, and marked cars. During the evening hours or the late hours, we have that same service that's being provided by our late detectives. During the midday, we have a court officer and a staff sergeant who are assigned to our records division. They're constantly working with the lab, our court systems, but they're throughout the community, sometimes in marked units, unmarked units, sometimes the motorcycle. But same thing, they're patrolling the downtown. We're doing foot patrols, and when I say we're doing foot patrols, it includes myself and the deputy chief. We are not beyond doing patrols. I've seen many faces in this room downtown or in other parts of the community that we are out of the car. I suggest you call us. If you need anything, we are truly there to try to help the best that we can. I'm not saying that we have the absolute solution, and the most recent direction that's been given out to our staff is the current one, the one that I just described, is in place until something better comes along.
So you say that you guys do your homework, though, and before these charges are set, to try to keep things in line or whatever. But just for example, Mr. Perker, it's only because it happens to be you, and this was a big deal for me. I had resided on that property, mind you, and as you can tell, not the atypical drug addict, wound on myself, very quiet, barely had company from September to February. I actually have that address still on my mainstay ID. I had been there so long. I got woke up by 2 officers at 4:30 in the morning and arrested. I mean, woke up out of a dead-ass sleep by myself in a tent, minding my business, not doing drugs, not having sex in the fucking bushes. Sorry.
Ma'am.
But no.
Ma'am,
my
no,
point
no,
is,
listen,
no,
I want to make a point.
My bail commission, my
Ma'am.
bail condition.
You let someone else
Ma'am.
talk, Ma'am, ma'am,
Stop.
stop, or I'll ask you to leave.
So Tobias, the other part of Tobias's question, and the chief mentioned the police response. I'm talking now.
One more time, I'm going to ask you to leave.
The chief mentioned the police response. The other alternative.
Please leave. You are disrupting this meeting. You are disrupting this meeting. You are not giving others an opportunity to ask questions nor answer them. Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, have a great day.
So to Tobias's question, alternatives to law enforcement responses, some other communities have looked at these programs where you can contract with non-law enforcement, kind of what we've had with our parking district and things like that. We're actually looking at some of those we've explored already, but even looking at internal staff that we have that could be part of their duties as well, and that will be coming to the council at some point soon to be discussing those alternatives too. So I think that's where he was going with the other part of that, so thank you.
And I don't know if it's worth mentioning too that our police department is currently understaffed. We don't have a full complement of officers now, which of course impacts coverage.
That is correct. However, we are fortunate, summer's almost upon us, so the schools are going to be letting out. So the 2 school resource officers that we provide to the schools through the course of the year will be released. They're going to be assigned in part to the downtown to help during some of those overlaps for the added coverage and to cover some of the other calls as well.
And I just want to add, I speak to a lot of communities throughout Kennebec and Somerset County, and I often don't get to say this, so I have to say, we are lucky with the Augusta Police Department. Their reports come in well-written. They have been checked over by their supervisors. They are actually meeting the elements of every criminal statute. And when Chief Lully says that he has this 2-pronged approach and he's giving people opportunities, I know that's true. And that is reflected in the way that we charge the cases. Because I know that for a case to reach my desk, they've done everything right. They're a phenomenal police force. I live in Augusta as well, and I'm glad I live in Augusta because I know they're the ones who are going to respond if I need help. Really do an excellent job, and I don't get to say that everywhere, so I just had to at least give a shout out.
All right, I'm sorry for that. Are there other questions? For who haven't, Megan asked. Matt, Megan?
Thank you.
I don't have any expertise on a lot of these populations, but I did want to ask two questions. One, is it not possible to bring back the Kennebec Explorer and have that as transportation? I actually use that.
It's
not quite done.
possible. We're trying to work with them. We're trying to get them to give us their dollar amount, their figure, their proposal. So we're waiting on them.
Okay, thank you.
As an option.
And the other question is, I've been told by several social workers that I know that general assistance funds in almost every town are basically like Kafka-esque things that nobody can access. I don't know if that's true. That's what a lot of people say. It might be just that a lot of populations don't have the paperwork that's needed, or the ability to get the paperwork, or the identification that are needed for the paperwork. So what I was wondering is, have we ever tried some kind of Augusta assistance that is not something that is directly state related, that we don't have those, those barriers to people being able to access it? Because I feel like when I'm listening to, and I know she spoke a lot, but when she was talking about the $35 fees for those things, that seems like the kind of thing that we could solve a problem and make one person not homeless, Or let's see, I'm sure there's lots of things like that if we had a fund that wasn't as difficult to access. And I've heard this from so many social workers saying that it's difficult to access. And I work in a public library, not in Augusta's, but in Gardner's, and I see people every day and try to help them figure out paperwork, figure out how to get an ID. And these things are so much harder when you don't have any access to anything. So I just think maybe we should consider doing that. And I'm going to say one tiny thing. And I was talking to Kevin just a few minutes ago about that. But counselor, sorry. So I have been doing a study, and I'll try to be really brief. I've been doing a study, and it's a historical study of the annual reports from the beginnings of the annual reports, and how much we give. And from a historical perspective, it was called poor relief, how much we give throughout the years. And I feel like everybody in this room would be shocked at how much our grandparents or our great-parents were willing to give compared to us. I think that around 1933 to 36, they were giving, adjusted for inflation, about $1 million more than we are to this issue. And I know we have Social Security now. I know there are different things, but I think that's something we should consider. But, oh wait, I have one more question. Sorry. Is it not possible, I don't understand the intricacies of policing, so please give. Is it not possible for officers to be walking along downtown while waiting for calls?
No, that's a great question, and you're spot on. So when I had mentioned the overlapping of the different assets that we have, our early detective and late detective, the court officer, we're all taking part in trying to do that. A lot of the officers that are assigned to the districts, between responding to the calls, doing the reports, and trying to mitigate just their daily routine, they are relatively busy. We're not busy all the time. If we were busy all the time, I wouldn't be able to walk down there either. We can all find time. But what we are now doing is taking a more proactive role and making sure that's an assigned duty versus just, saying, we have a briefing before every shift, and rather than just simply put it that we'd like to see some added patrol downtown, we're actually assigning folks now. So we're already implementing that. There's no sunset on it. Again, until there's a better plan moving forward, we'll continue to do that. What we run into is, as the mayor mentioned, is the staffing. So, we're currently down 4 positions right now. And as we roll into the next budget, we'll be faced with, a couple sustained vacancies. They're hard to fill. It takes 6 months to hire and get a person on the payroll. By the time we do a background check, get them through the hiring process, and get them through the door ready to start. Part of that training that we do with them is we actually assign them to find a community project to work on. They can identify that themselves, and we've actually had officers in the past that have picked up some of the issues that are occurring downtown now and in the past. That's become their project, and actually have created some of the models that we still use in our patrol activities today. So it's a great question.
So, Megan, with respect to your question about helping out in little ways with paperwork and stuff, I don't know, Earl, I don't know whether GA is equipped to do that or handle incidental expenses, and I want to pick on Betty. My memory bank tells me that that's sometimes something that you folks at the UCLC are able to help with on occasion. Do you want? Sorry to pick you out.
Yes, we do that. We do help with paperwork. We have a computer lab that folks can access email applications, things like that, and we have on-site assistance for those things.
Yeah, and I bet some of the other service providers in the room do
I'm
likewise.
sure they do. I know that the link does. Maybe Bobby Joe would like to talk about that.
We do the same exact thing that Betty just said, yes, with computers and everything.
Fund those services. A lot of the way that they're functioning is through like private donors and grants, and that the city itself could invest in those things directly to the organizations that are seeing people every single day. And there's definitely a need. But I grabbed the thing because I wanted to ask a question too. And I actually live in Gardner. I work in Augusta, and I'm at the UCLC a lot. And so I know a lot of the unhoused folks in Augusta. And so my question was, and in my job, I do like a lot of state level advocacy, and so I hear the supply and demand excuse all the time. We have to build, we have to build, we have to build. And I think it's hard to know that it's gonna take 5-10 years in our state to come up with the supply, and that a lot of the affordable housing that's being built isn't actually affordable. And so I guess my question is, in the meantime, like people are experiencing like intense trauma being outside, and what the city might think of doing about even just making clean water available to people who are outside, showers, bathrooms. I know there's a host of problems that come up and excuses about the mess that's left behind and the staff that has to come up behind and pick up, but I think there are some cheaper things that can be done while these buildings and transitional housing is being built and RFPs are being written that are just like really needed. And we were just talking today about how the dog park has a hose for dogs, and people who are unhoused don't necessarily have access to water all day long, and they have to wait for a center to be open. If those services are available and we don't know about them, we'd love to hear about that too. So just wanting comment and thoughts from you all.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is the delivery of those services, where, how they're supported from a staff perspective. How do you monitor? What's the expense? How do you keep it from being abused or a few ruining something for the many? So those are some of the things that the task force had gleaned from their public meetings about even those types of support items, like places to put your belongings during the day and that sort of thing. At least at this point, we rely on the network of service providers to kind of, provide a lot of those things. I'm going to go to people who haven't asked a question yet. I know that she's already asked a question, so we'll go right here. Wait for the microphone.
Which one are you?
In the orange.
And the gentleman with a plaid shirt up top has had his hand up.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Jeannie. A lot of people call me Mama Angel. I have been part of the Augusta community twice in life. I suppose you could say I had a 13-year break in between peer support and advocacy and mediation and advisory. I've worked with APD and Portland PD on paranormal research and psychic and telekinetic ability since I was probably 3 years old. Much for the city of Augusta. I have tried really hard to pull this crew, this awesome crew that I have, together from the bowels of, I guess you could call it hell hole, where we're left at Camp Keys. And maybe it means a little bit more to me that it's Camp Keys, but it's the Aim High programs that I came from and work with also, along with the Riverview Project. My grandmother owned the Gray Manor House, and she has left it to our family. In the process of, I'm sorry, I'm nervous and I'm having trouble breathing. Bear with me. I have a huge family and a Hollywood family aside from that had some really good news for me back in 1987 in the process of raising money for worldwide Doctors Without Borders. We had several other fundraisers come together also, one of which was for the city of Augusta and our engineering teams. Some of them have worked with military services, some of them abbreviated, some of them local PD, some of them not at all. But we've pulled together here and remain here, some of us engineers, some of us just interactive programmers. But I admire them all for their strength and their courage and their perseverance in this quoted homelessness. A lot of us just refuse to, I suppose, be told what to do in our own homes. And I kind of admire them for that, but in the process, we're also spoiled, rotten royalty. And a lot of them, I know, were brought up being told that things were acceptable and they had to learn not to be. And some things were not acceptable and we had to learn to be. But they're all still people, and they're still human, and they're still amazing entities, all of them. And they're here with me again. After starting everything that we did in 1987, they're still here. Right, Bobby Joe? Yeah. You're still here. They're still here. I have a question and an answer. While I'm in the process of pulling that money that we all took part in pulling together back then, back into play, there are people that wanted to see me very bad in their recreational therapy, which is what I'm trying to do. My question is, if I can pull together the same permissions from the electric company and from Statler Tissue and from our partners with the railroad programs, the walkways that they're doing. We had been given permission to have certain areas where we were allowed to, my engineering team here, us beautiful homeless people, we were given permission to utilize certain areas to try to gather, hold on, I'm trying really hard to find the right words, to pull together our concepts between us. Without being disturbed is kind of our problem. And I don't mean to use the term blind faith, but I'm seeing it happen more often with them, with the city of Augusta. A lot of them are pulling through, and I've seen a lot of progress. And I'm willing to continue with my disabled butt cheeks on the subject, to see through the permissions that we were granted back then with the coming railroad pathways. It makes it a little bit easier for us to get there and do these things. If we can pull together civilized, I guess I'm asking, is it still all right for us to continue, because they're coming in on me. And if I'm not there, I can't get my disabled people what they need. But when I get removed, that kind of takes the middleman out of all 4 tent city areas. And maybe some of them didn't know who I was. I'm Cherry Brandy, Jane LaMontagne. I started the warming centers in the area in between 86 and 87. And I was falsely accused and got sent to rehab and did my whole therapy thing.
So
But
can I interrupt you? I want you to get to your question.
the question is, if I can keep pulling them together, if we can keep making progress, is it okay to utilize that money for the purpose that we originally intended? That quoted proposal was made in 87 for the 4 areas for Tent City. And I think somebody tried to pull it together without me doing so, and maybe it went a little bit differently than what was planned. Originally, it was intended to have a much more professional small camping area, like a campground, not just to come in and put up your tent kind of thing.
So I would suggest, I don't know what fund of money that you're referring to. I guess my suggestion was, rather than vet it here, that maybe you
Mayor,
contact.
if I may.
Yeah.
Jeannie, I know we've had some conversations in the past, and you've been a huge asset to us. We appreciate your help. If you would just give me a call at my office, I know you have access to that. And if not, remind me before we leave, and I'll make sure that you have that, and we'll have a follow-up conversation, okay? Go, okay, thank you.
All right. In the
Hi,
very
my name
back,
is-
standing in the very back.
My name is Bill Cusick. I'm a resident of Augusta. My concern is all of the hypodermic needles that I'm seeing around the community. I went down to Mount Vernon Avenue early in the season to take some kids down to practice softball, and in the dugout was trash and uncapped hypodermic needles. I've seen them in other places, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room have seen them. I think the intent of handing out needles was to prevent the spread of bloodborne pathogens from one user to the next. If you leave an uncapped needle laying around and a child sits on it, or a public works employee picks it up and accidentally sticks himself, they contract AIDS or HIV or hepatitis. Those are life-altering diseases. And I wonder whether the city, number one, has had any cases where a city employee or a child or a citizen has been accidentally stuck with one of these dirty needles, because the intent may have been the best of intents. But it turned out that now you're not only endangering one small portion of the community, you're endangering the entire community with these infectious diseases, because these needles are everywhere. And so all I would ask is that, number one, have a contact person within the city so that you can track, because it's going to happen. I'm pretty certain that you are all aware of how many there are out there. It's going to happen. And when it does, it'd be nice to know that this year we had 1 case, next year we had 5 cases, because you can't solve problems unless you truly look at the data to figure out, like I said, it may have been the best of intentions to try to stop the spread of disease, but is anybody tracked, did it do that, or did it create a bigger problem? That's all I have. Thank you.
I don't have the answer to whether it's tracked by the city or any other organization. Do you? Anybody here know that?
I don't
Know
believe
the
so.
answer?
No, I would assume that if it was an employee of the city, then it would be tracked through human resources through, an on-work or workplace health injury. The other side of that is, if you see them out there, and I know you're out in the community often, you can call the police department, you can call fire department, we'll connect you with Dawn. Dawn's picked up not less than, and I say 1,000 in a plural sense, just herself, but we all have the proper PPEs, containers, the equipment we need to safely pick those up. So if you're seeing them, please let us know immediately. Don't call somebody else, call us directly, as the mayor had said, and so that way we can get those picked up. We don't want anybody to get hurt, especially in the way you're describing.
Yes, in the back, Matt.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Green, and I'm a resident of Augusta. I have a question, and I'm just going to ask it. I'm just curious, how many or unhoused people are actually from the Augusta area. And then I want to know how many may be from away, and what attracts the unhoused to the Augusta area. Because it would be interesting to know if we're spending all this money, and it's Augusta residents or from the Augusta area that are having hard times, then you kind of own. Not that I don't want to take care of other people also, but there's got to be something that's attracting people to Augusta to come, because I go other places in other states and I don't see that sometimes, a lot of times. And it's just kind of crazy to me why all of a sudden we have this influx of homeless people.
Does anyone want to tackle that? Don?
We have a lot of things here that the outlying communities don't. We have the jail, so people come here, end up in jail for 5 minutes, 5 days, and when they're discharged, half the time it's in the middle of the night, they have no place to go. Some of them remain. We have hospitals here too, so people come with the expectation of getting treatment. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't, but they end up on the street. So there are a lot of things that bring people here that are outside of the resources being offered, because clearly the resources that are being offered aren't covering the needs of the people that we have here. So it's not enough to draw them. In the wintertime, there's the warming center, the overnight warming center, which is attractive to other communities because they don't have them, but people aren't coming to get resources here. They're coming because they're brought here.
Mrs. O'Brien? No, don't give her a microphone.
I was looking at you. She's next.
We have a handful of people we know who've grown up here, but
Thank
I
you.
didn't, this is not a plant.
No, I was going to say, this isn't a plant. But I just have to say that, I'm Julia O'Brien, Mark's wife of many, many years. But I have to say, being from Augusta forever, I'm really proud to be here tonight, because this room is full, and it's full of everyone here. Maybe you're on, I don't want to say different sides, but you're on, everything is tension. Tension meaning the businesses and the unhoused, and but we're all here trying to talk about this, and I give the city, not Mark, I give the city a lot of credit. I never give him credit. But I really think, and I've been involved a lot in the mental health field and in the substance abuse field. And I understand the problems. You can't medicate people. You can't tell people to be medicated. The families are, you got to take care of my family. I understand this, but I want to thank everyone here, and also, I'm being told to say, everyone in this room and outside the room has a story, and everyone deserves empathy, compassion, try to understand both sides. And the other thing is, I really think that each one of us can do something simple, very simple, to help someone else. I don't know if I've made my point, but that's it.
Nope. Not yet. Right. We'll get
Hi,
there.
my name's Katrina. I'm an Augusta resident. I've also grown up here my whole life, so I've watched Augusta evolve over the years. But I also raise my children here, and I guess I come tonight as a parent, maybe. And my biggest concern, one of my biggest concerns, there's a lot of parts of town that we don't bring our kids anymore. I don't enjoy driving down the road and having my young children say, "Mom, what is that person doing?" And they're snorting a line off a pillar going on Memorial Bridge on the way home, right? That's leaving school. Or I don't even go down Water Street at all. And there's a lot of businesses down there that my family truly loves and enjoys. There's a portion of it that's being completely revamped, and it's beautiful. And I think it's losing a lot of business because of fear. And I'm not saying that that's the whole community. I don't think it is. But there is a good portion that it's kind of scary. It really is, you know. As a tax-paying citizen also, I would like to add that, it's concerning to not be able to utilize or even drive through a lot of portions of the city. You know, I feel for a lot of the businesses on Water Street. And I think it's a problem where everybody wants someone to blame or something to blame. And I think it really boils down to, and again, this is my opinion, mental health, right? We have all these solutions we can come up with housing or this and that, but if we're not hitting the root of the problem, how successful are those solutions going to be? That's my train of thought. I've been thinking that for years. So I think hearing Megan talk a lot about, and forgive me, I've been listening to a lot, so I don't remember word for word what you had talked about, but it raises questions. You know, a lot of the barriers and problems we're running into are at a government level, right? Laws, bills, so on. What is actively in the works to try to change things to fit the reality of what we're in? I guess that's my first question. And I guess, I don't really know I don't know. It was awesome though, Megan, to hear you talk about all of that. I think that's a huge step in the right direction. But what's a timeline on it? Are there things that we can be doing in the meantime to address the mental health and see somewhat of an improvement? I don't know. I don't think there's like an answer we can all collectively come up with, but I do think sitting here and being able to hear everybody is amazing, and I think that's the first step to get to a better place. But it's concerning. My biggest things is, what are we showing my kids, right? We're showing my kids it's okay to do drugs actively on the side of the road. But I teach my kids opposite, right? But they see it happening. So what are we displaying for our youth that's going to turn into tax-paying citizens as well? It's concerning. It's really concerning. I have 3 young children, and we don't use a lot of the city, and that's pretty sad. And we pay a lot of taxes to live here, you know, so that's a little concerning as well. I don't know as though I really have a specific question or answer or suggestion. I truly think if we can get to the root of the cause, you'll start to see resolution. It's not going to be immediate. We need to go to the root. We got to get back to like basics. And if changing laws and guidelines and all of this is the answer to fit the reality of what we live in, what are we doing to do that, right? Are there things actively being worked and in place to try to modify those barriers? Because a lot of what we're hearing back is it's at a different level, right? It's a law thing. You just enforce, which I understand, I wholeheartedly understand, but it leaves frustration, I guess.
I can address on the timeline. The legislature is not back in session until January. So the committee that I'm working on, we do have legislators that are part of it. And they are saying that the plan is that they'll be introducing these bills. I don't know if they'll pass, but we do have people running for the legislature here, and you can certainly ask them their opinion when they come to your door, which is what I love about Maine. I love that legislators do go and they knock on the door and they say, hey, do you have anything you want to talk to me about, right? And so do talk to them about it. I do think they'll listen, and we do need solutions. And I'm not talking about solutions that Texas has that could be like horrifying to Mainers, right? Massachusetts has the solution, where it's not a crazy solution to be able to insist that people have medication. But it does make me really sad to hear you say there's places you wouldn't want to go. I raised 2 children in Augusta, and the parks were a huge part of raising them. We went to all of the parks. I don't think there's one in Augusta we didn't spend hours and hours and days at. To the swimming pool up on Sand Hill, we used to go and swim there. And You know, I don't know if people feel comfortable today, because my kid's 27 now. So, so it was a while ago. And it really makes me sad to hear you say that. The restaurants on Water Street are phenomenal. State Lunch, Kushnock, Riverfront Barbecue, I could go on and on. They're so great. And it should be safe. And I know that, I know that the plan that Chief Lully has right now to really look seriously at this, from my perspective, it does seem to be working. Because it's been in the last couple of weeks, I'm seeing. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So that gets to the root point of like, okay, we need to go to what we're allowed to do and make it reality.
Yeah. And the city doesn't have the money to put cameras up everywhere, and nor would everybody want that. But individual property owners certainly can. And I can't tell you how many times I've been able to prove a case because of individual property owners having cameras that face out to the street. And so that I'm able to say, okay, so the car was here, and then the car was here, and then, when you can explain all of that to the jury, it makes a really big difference. And when people know that we're prepared, they're also less likely to commit a crime in that area. So it helps all around.
So, first-time questioners? Pick one, Jared.
Jillian Jolliker, just purchased a business here in Augusta. It's been an eye-opening experience. It's my 6th location in Maine, and it hasn't been a pleasant one. I myself, my business, have contacted police numerous times. There have been people that have defecated on my building, urinated on my building, and my building is on State Street, and apparently it's known to be the bathroom. So I had to fence it off to prevent this from continuing to happen because of the biohazard. But the other part I'm trying to get to is the needles. We raked a very small section of our yard, 3 by 10, and then say 3 by 20. And there were 400 needles mixed in with the leaves. I called all the resources you mentioned, got nowhere. I called the Augusta Police Department. My staff called what I believe to be the Access Center, who was giving out the needles. And we ended up having to call the Waterville Police Department, who gave us immediate guidance on how to handle it because the needles were mixed in with the leaves. And when we got the Harm Reduction Center in Augusta, they wanted my employees to pick the dirty needles out of the leaves and put them into a biohazard container, and I told them not to do that. So we worked with the Waterville Police to properly dispose of 400 needles mixed in trash bags of leaves to throw them into the dump. And that was done, in a safe manner with duct tape, big barrels. But my question is, how do you communicate to the community how to handle that? Because we reached out to every resource that you've given, and we weren't given any of that direction. I'm a nurse. I have a master's degree, and there was never any communication that we received about who is going to take care of all these dirty needles. I'm right on the corner of State Street across from the courthouse. And I can also just comment, and you can comment on this too, is I haven't had the same response from police. I've shown videos. I've never had anybody issued a trespass. I was told by the officers that you lack resources, so nothing has ever been done on the numerous calls that we've put in. So I hear you saying that's what should happen. I'm just saying that's not what we're experiencing as a business owner on State Street.
May I?
You may.
So, I'm sorry. Let me start with that. My officers should be a reflection of the ideals and the policies and the the culture that I hope to foster there. So if we're not providing you the services that Waterville did, again, Waterville is a wonderful police department. I partner with Chief Bonnie often, and so I'm glad that he was able to assist you, but that doesn't stop from the hurt that I feel that we were unable to. Please make sure that you have my contact information before you leave, because I would certainly love to have a follow-up conversation about this. But I'll reiterate, even though the mayor has said it, and I know you said that we did not, but please call us. We have multiple tiers of supervision, and if at any time an officer tells you that they can't provide you service just because of lack of resources, that's not an appropriate answer, it's not an accepted answer, and that's not the answer that we're giving them for guidance to share. We have policies and guidelines on just about every facet of our job to address that situation that you're talking about. A lot of different moving pieces with it when you're talking about the volume that you are, but what we would be looking at is the potential hazardous site that you have, and if it meant that we had to call Dawn and she had to connect us with somebody else, or we had to contact Earl and he was going to give us guidance on who we could call, then we would do that. We don't necessarily pick up needles off of all private properties, because if we did that, then the city would never achieve anything else other than needle collection. However, you should have never been left alone.
Why are we giving away unlimited free needles if the cops can't even pick them up?
I'm not saying that we can't pick them up. I'm saying that we have an array of other duties to do as well, so those aren't our primary roles. Fortunate for us, Dawn picks up hundreds per week at the different sites that she goes to.
There's two needle distribution centers in Augusta. There's two. The other one's up on Green Street. So it goes without saying, the city's not distributing them. They're not paying anybody to distribute them. At the same time, it's something that's allowed, and I think, I don't know if regulated is the right word, but regulated by the state of Maine. I was told that there might be somebody here tonight from the CDC that can talk about needles. I don't know if that's true. I do too.
Can we pay people to pick up the needles if they have OSHA training? Not as much as Jared over here, because he's been doing it for 25 years, but they have OSHA training to pick up the needles and just pick their own hours and how many hours you want to do and just do the proper procedure because they have the OSHA training for years. Like I've got 10 years of OSHA training. I have 100 certificates. I'm not working. I know all about PPE and all that stuff, so what's the deal with that?
Are you applying for a job?
Yes.
I should add, we don't have a lot, I mean, the whole system has a lack of resources, but at least in my office, we are fully staffed, and this is a top priority. I have lunches with every prosecutor in my office. We have an attorney lunch once a month, and everyone knows this is a top priority. I've told the chiefs if they are seeing cases not charged that they think should be charged, I want to know immediately, because this is what I'm hearing from the community is what you described could be criminal mischief. And if I'm not charging it, then I'm wrong. I want to make sure that I am actually taking every concern from citizens and making that a top priority. So definitely let me know if that's not happening.
If I didn't have 100 OSHA certificates, I wouldn't be putting myself out there because I have a lot of training. Not as much as him, but I have a lot of training.
So the chief asked, he wanted to add one more point to the discussion.
The old chief.
Mr. Manager.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad Megan answered the question about, like, we can seek recovery through restitution if we're able to prove who's doing that. The key, and the chief might have said it and I might have missed it, but private property versus city property, public property. We can't go on private property and clean those properties up, but we can give the resources and the advice, and that would be our mechanism to get something clean through restitution, would be we catch the people doing that, leaving that, those are crimes, and that. Yeah,
Oh, great.
we should be.
We should be
Yeah,
prosecuting that.
please connect with the chief, and we can. Yep.
Good.
No.
So we definitely care about it, and the word restitution, just in case everyone doesn't know, that is when a person is charged with a crime, that individual has to pay the victim for what was lost as a result of the crime. Classic case, person throws a rock, breaks a window. There's a cost to fix that window, let's say it's $500. The person who owns the window shouldn't have to pay it. It's the person who throws the rock that has to pay to have the window fixed. That's restitution. It used to be we had an enormous difficulty getting restitution, but because of someone in my office who is a big picture thinker, went above and beyond, went to the legislature, got the statute changed to enable us to collect people's tax returns and also bail money and also lottery winnings. We can now take credit cards. We are collecting restitution like we've never have been able to before. So it is, not 100% because we do have to get it from the defendant. I don't have this money just, sitting in my pocket. But we go after restitution very aggressively and try to have it so that victims are whole.
But if it's an unhoused person in this situation, there's really no real restitution.
Well, it depends because sometimes people still get tax returns. Sometimes people have bail money that they posted in order to make bail, and then that's money that can be taken. So because we're now going to every pot of money we can think of, we're just bringing in a lot more than we used to.
I caught Gil out of the corner of my. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. So you got a question, Gil?
I would say mark every needle before it's distributed with the distributor's identification somehow, right? First. And then when one of those needles is found, sanction or fine the distributor. And it is the city's problem. There is no restitution from a drug addict. And you don't want it if you could get it. There's no way you're going to get money out of a drug addict. All right, and the problem is needles. They're biohazard. Everyone that's found should be treated like a crime.
Also, isn't it, who's paying for those two needle exchanges? Where's the money coming from? If it's coming from grants from the state, isn't it the state actually funding that particular thing? Wouldn't it be the state's responsibility to clean it up?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that the city is not funding it. I don't know who is. I don't know if anybody in the audience has the answer to that.
Various sources. You've got the opioid settlement fund. Right, that's a big part of it, but there's other sources of being able to provide those services. It could be private, it could be public. So it's not like a black and white easy answer.
But if any money comes from public,
I don't have a mic.
I mean, the executive director of one of the programs is here, they could probably answer your question.
Okay. Hold on. Someone who seems to have some pertinent information over on the side.
Hi, my name is Elena Simon. I am the Viral Hepatitis and Harm Reduction Program Manager with the Maine CDC. I work in Augusta, not just with them, but also with shelters as well. I've been a resident of Augusta as well for the past 2 years. I think a little bit of what I wanted to share in this moment was around our syringe service programs, and that we do have mechanisms as is pertinent to the rules that have been created for tracking anything related to the giving out syringes, but also how they're being disposed of as well. Yeah, so these are metrics that we are tracking consistently, and our numbers tell us that as much as they give out is as much as essentially they're getting in as well. I'd be happy to share those information. Hi, I am still speaking. I would appreciate yielding the time to me as I hold the microphone. Thank you so much. So this is a very important community service that we have here as well. And when we talked about wanting to see data, we also know that the data shows that SSPs actually encourage the safe disposal of syringes in our communities. I work very closely with our syringe service providers, and I know they are working outside of, I think, what is being asked of them to continue to provide cleanups in our communities as well. They're continuing to facilitate the clean disposal, providing education, and such and so forth. So they are better equipped to address this syringe litter and protect public health as well. If you had any other questions, I would appreciate coming up to me. I'm happy to talk at any other point as well. Thank you so much.
All right. Young man in the white jacket, how about you?
So part of my question is, District Attorney, you talked about sort of at a higher level where there's criminality involved, trying to find innovative ways to avoid involvement in the criminal justice system. And I think, well, that's all well and good. We're talking about higher impact programs that we're looking for impacting average folks. And so are there any other programs on sort of a lower level offense, someone who has trespasses or other sort of offenses, where we can help them avoid involvement in the criminal justice system and get them to services? I know Dawn is doing a lot there, but there's a lot of community organizations here who are willing to engage with those types of things. And I'm, what's that?
All right, let him finish, please.
One of those things that I think is important is access to shelter. As a family practice physician that practices a lot of addiction medicine and a lot of psychiatry, because we have a relative lack of those things in the community, there's not a lot I can do to help folks when they don't have a safe place to stay. That sort of social determinant of health, we know from time and time again, looking at really good data, that housing first works. And I think that's my concern, is that we're not putting enough focus on getting that sort of initial step, initial rung in the ladder of getting people housed, which is in many ways shelter.
So the first part was asking, I think you were asking me what programs I have for people who are facing a criminal trespass as the only criminality that they're looking at is a criminal trespass. And many of those cases, I will say, end up on the mental health docket. And that's where, as I mentioned earlier, we're having state forensics is doing a full mental health evaluation to determine whether or not the person is competent to stand trial. And when we're able to connect that individual with services, and we know that the person now has a case manager and now has, say, a group home to live in, that's an ideal situation, then I feel comfortable with that being the outcome of the case. There's just not enough, because what we're seeing is that these are individuals who need more. A fine's not going to change it. 24 hours in jail isn't going to change anything. They really need supportive housing, and they need a case manager, and they need more than what I normally have any access to offering somebody. So that's what's unfortunate. But then there's also people who, if they will agree to a PTP, which is the Progressive Treatment Program, but they have to agree, if they will, that's another great solution, because then at least for 1 year, they'll be required to take all of their medications. So that's what interests me about the mental health docket and why I serve on it, because when I can make those connections, I see that it makes a difference. It's just not always, we're not always able to get that outcome, unfortunately. All I have in many situations is just jail and fine, and that's not adequate.
Who enforces that from a mental health provider standpoint? Who's enforcing that?
Oh, with the PTP, the Progressive Treatment Program, it does depend on the individual. Sometimes it could be the ACT team is involved. Sometimes it could be that it's their case manager who's checking in, or it could be the group home that they're living at. So it can be different for each individual. But if someone reports that they're not taking their medication, then the PTP provides the accountability to say, no, then there's going to be a consequence where the person does go into a mental health hospital to require that medication be taken. Yeah.
Still dealing with first-time questioners, right here in the front.
Afternoon, neighbors. It's really nice that everybody's actually here, being able to talk about this calmly, civilly, but for the most part at least. I'm actually mostly here just to listen and learn today, so I'm going to keep this short. We don't have infinite resources, at our disposal. So what are like the priorities or the first step that you think is going to be the most important that you need to focus on? And in 6 months from now, how are we going to know that this is actually working?
A 6-month solution? I don't know of one. I mean,
Seeing progress. How are we going to be able to measure the progress in 6 months?
well, again, some of the things I talked about at the top of the program. We've got the supportive housing that's being developed, to be developed on Oxford Street for housing. We're from a safety standpoint, we've redone our loitering ordinance to give the police department another tool in dealing with what people encounter downtown and elsewhere through the city. I mean, it's not just isolated in downtown. I mean, you can find issues around the town. We're just going to keep trying to take small bites at this and try to make incremental differences, and keeping in mind the recommendations that came from the task force and doing what we can. Not all of them we can do. We're hoping that once we get through this licensing ordinance procedure and the land use ordinance, that will generate some interest and ability among service providers to provide more services and perhaps supportive or housing or low barrier shelters. So unfortunately, there's no quick fix that I can offer you.
Real quick, I actually just want to stand up for the services helping the homeless. Okay, I, within 3 days, had helped someone get into a home after possibly being assaulted. Upon listening to his stories and the lady's stories over here, when they are trespassed from these places, I have heard more than once that it literally takes 5 seconds to grab their bags and help them off of that property, and that they are not receiving their items. So we're talking tonight about how the community services and how difficult it is for the city of Augusta to get into those, and how everything is expensive and hard to get to. If we, or you guys as law enforcement, aren't letting them receive their items that has their clothes and like their last belongings in it, and then they go out and suffer by paying more money to then go and buy more items for the next Dunkin' or the next business to trespass them because of an incident, and then that stuff continues. That also doesn't help them get off the streets either, because now they're spending more money to try and survive out on the streets rather than getting the help. And this is just coming from people that are addicted and aren't addicted, right? We have people on the streets that aren't addicted to drugs, and they're suffering the same as much as people with addiction. So is there any way with law enforcement taking the empathy and the courtesy of helping them out? And on top of that, I think with the stereotypes of the homeless community, how we're all focused on needles, which is a very big issue, that we also stereotype the folks that aren't addicted, so they're also looked at the same. In law enforcement, I have taken CATC at Quincy High School, so verbal judo is a huge thing in law enforcement. That helps you guys stay out of physical altercations and de-escalations. So how would you say with empathy on top of verbal judo, and then on top of enforcing things that you guys have to do, that you can still help them out receive their items that now they're losing and having to spend more money on trying to survive out here on the streets?
That's a lot of question. So I'll start with the property. That's a big question that comes up. What happens to somebody's property when we trespass somebody? Typically what we do is we give 24 hours. We treat it just like if it was somebody's vehicle, if it was on the public street and it can't be parked there for more than 24 hours. We figure it's a good baseline, so that way it standardizes it. We're fortunate because anytime we get information that an officer may have deviated from the 24 hours, we have body camera footage on all of our officers that we can go back and review at any given time. Same thing with our phone lines. When we're receiving these phone calls, we can review those at any time as well. 24 hours is sort of the base. If a person's there and they don't have property there, then we kind of default away from that 24 hours. It really doesn't apply, but we want them to be able to have their property. We know, again, I always defer to Dawn, who gives us a little bit better glimpse and insight into things that, from the police perspective, we might not always have a great overall purview with. But with that, we will usually try to dispatch Dawn to those types of complaints first if we know that it's just a basic trespass. This is not where we're not talking to business, but we're looking at some of the encampments, some of the locations that people are trying to stay, get some sleep, stay warm. Dawn will go first. She'll exhaust all of her capabilities with folks first to extend every resource possible to try to get them to pick up their property, take it with them. Again, never taking less than 24 hours. If anything, it extends to sometimes 2 and 3 days. We're fortunate with the communication that we have with city staff. There's some baselines there, and we know that that's a fair minimum to have in place. The folks that are unhoused, the property that they have with them is everything. And so if we traumatize them by now, either not letting them have access to that property, or removing them in a way that they can't protect it, then the amount of stress and the trauma that they experience is things that I can't assimilate with. But that doesn't mean that we don't still offer that. I'm not saying that we do it right every time. We're humans, just like everybody in this room. We try to do our best, with that. But the good news is there's never any tight timeline crunch. Very rare are the situations that we have to act immediately and have somebody move. So I don't know if I answered that. You mentioned the verbal judo, incorporated with the empathy as well. You're right. We talked earlier about bringing on new hires. Part of our PTO process, our training process, is having those officers have face-to-face conversations with people as often as possible. We do a lot of business via phone, text, email, just like everybody else. But by having those officers learn how to have those face-to-face contacts, it teaches them how to communicate, read body language, see the fear, see the emotions that are incorporated in that. We also, have them, do those community projects that we mentioned. And again, part of those are it's based on what they're observing in their community that they're now working in, so that they can focus on that. And again, I think by having them have those personal contacts, again, that lends that empathy. When they go to the academy, beyond the training that we give them, they get the verbal judo, for lack of a better term, but it's weeks upon weeks where it starts incremental. They're put in stressful situations. Again, I've been a lot of years since I've been to the academy. I can tell you I did not do great in those stressful situations when I first started because I had no training in it. But as you become more exposed to that, a lot of the service providers that are in this room are professionals at that. They have conversations and talk with people on a regular basis. So again, we enjoy partnering with them as well, because a lot of times there's resources that they can offer that we might not necessarily be able to offer ourselves.
Peggy? In the turquoise, Peggy?
I have to say, I'm here to listen and learn as well. I don't know a lot about homelessness, but I have to ask. If people don't have an address and they don't qualify for aid, for assistance. What do they get for money? How do they get money? And how do they get money for phones and cigarettes? And how do they buy this stuff? You say, they buy possessions. Where does their money come from? I don't know, because my grandkids asked me this, and I'm with the lady that left already. Just today, riding through Water Street, there's 4 of them sitting there on the corner. Now they're on Mount Vernon Avenue instead of down by the trestle. They're down at the old, whatever it used to be, 7-Eleven, and they're all sitting there. They're all like smoking cigarettes and on their phones. Where does this money come from? I don't understand, so I can't answer my kids. Where do they get their money? Where do the people get their money? They don't have an address.
So that's a great question, right? Because, we don't know. It's an array of different locations. Sometimes it's from soliciting on those corners. They're standing on the islands through the better parts of the days. You see them as you drive, just like I do, and they're asking for handouts. We try to discourage people from providing them anything, but we certainly can't prohibit the folks from asking for help. And so some of these folks actually make a lot of cash on a daily basis, enough to sustain certain habits. The other side is there's certain illicit behaviors that they engage in to earn money. I'm sure you can figure out what I'm talking about, but not all are. We certainly don't encourage. And when we find out about certain activities taking place, we have a line of detectives, a task force that are assigned to investigate those. So we encourage you or other folks to call about those so we can investigate those. I wish I had a better answer for you, but there are, really limitless resources, just like any of us, about how they get their money.
Just follow up. How many of these people, there's 125 that, are they eligible to work? Could they work if they weren't in this drug habit? Or what's the percentage of people that could be working if they weren't addicted? Does anybody know that?
I don't know any kind of percentage to answer that question, but what I can say is there's a small number of people that everybody here sees on a daily basis and associates with the problem. That's a very small number of the actual unhoused population. There's a good number of people that hold jobs, who earn money, who do the same things we do and cannot afford housing. And that's not because they're addicted to drugs or they're breaking into houses or any of the other things that you've heard here tonight. It's because they've been priced out of housing. And that's a whole different issue. And unfortunately, everybody gets painted with that same broad brush. And there's less incentive to provide help to the whole population based on the behaviors of just very few.
Right here in the front.
Hi, my name is Brandy. I live in Augusta. I've worked at a couple of the resource centers around. And my question is primarily for, I think probably for the chief. If for some reason, say we were to not have a place to stay tonight, is there a place that a citizen of Augusta could sleep for a night that is not illegal? I know that you can't set up camps according to the city codes, that people don't want to sleep on a sidewalk, but all we're hearing is you can't be here, you can't be here, and eventually they're going to pass out somewhere if they can't stay a full night anywhere and get a night's sleep. So where within the city are people allowed to rest so that they can get up and go to those jobs, so they can get up and go to those services, so they can try to move forward and maintain their own health? If, that's, yeah.
That's a great question. We do have a couple of homeless shelters, or unhoused shelters here in the community. I saw Victoria raising her hand, and I'm sure she'll want to chime in momentarily. We don't proactively go out at nighttime to look to see where people are sleeping to move them along. We do have certain locations that are on what's called an extra patrols list that we have specifically had requests from the property owners asking, and I'll use the PD as an example. It's not one, but if the property owner at 7 Willow Street specifically said we don't want anybody staying here during the overnight, they can actually fill out a request for a trespass order that after hours we check it, and we do that for folks that are, for taxpayers in the community. It's a service that we do provide, but those are far and few between. The quiet areas that we have a lot of folks that go and they'll park during the overnight to stay away from the hustle and bustle of downtown, to stay away from the foot traffic. Those folks, I won't say get a restful night, but they don't encounter the police. Now, with that said, I do know that we have folks that on occasion will end up at the police department. And because it's a winter's night, the warming center is full, the other shelters are full, and we've had folks stay there before. So there's a police department, there's several fire departments, there are emergency services, and we are all 24-hour operations that can help out. Now, I see Victoria's chomping at the bit with the microphone, so.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Victoria Abbott. I'm the executive director of Bread of Life, and our homeless shelter is 54 beds. It is a 24-hour facility, so people can come in. The police, they're fantastic. Thank you for all you do. They bring people into our shelter any time of the night to get resources for that. I also want to echo, now that I have the microphone, what Dawn said. You know, like I said, we have a 54-bed facility. That's 54 people that are considered unhoused and who cannot afford. They're out of general assistance sometimes not, because they have jobs. They go to jobs. People can work. And it is, again, to echo what Dawn said, the 15 to 18 folks that are the problem, that are not picking up their needles, that are causing all the other resources. Betty goes out, the Access Center goes out, Bobby Joe goes out, we all go out, we're cleaning up needles in downtown Augusta, we're all trying to do our part for a population, a subset of a population of people that are giving the homelessness people in Augusta a bad reputation, because there are people working extremely hard at minimum wage jobs, bringing their kids to school every day and doing the best they can and cannot afford to sustain apartments.
All right, I'm still Katie? Yep.
My name is Katie McCormick. I'm a resident of Augusta. I raised my family here since 2012, and I remember the first time that we took a walk across Williams Park. We took our kids to McDonald's, and one of them picked up a needle, and it was one needle one time, and that was in 2012. It is fair to say that it has gotten progressively worse over a number of years, even in the last 5 to 7, I guess I would say. So my questions are specific to the opioid settlement money that everybody talks about. How much money did Maine get? And I heard somebody saying in an interview the other day it's a 50, 30, 20% split. Where did that go? Does anybody know the math on that? I'm curious, and I have a follow-up question.
I don't have a question about what Maine received. Augusta's part of the opioid settlement, and we get funding directly to us, but I don't know what overall Maine's getting. I can tell you what we've gotten is in the neighborhood of $800,000 so far.
Okay, and what are we doing with that besides building a homeless shelter?
That hasn't been used for that. What basically we've done is Dawn's salary is paid for out of opioid funding, so it doesn't come out of our general fund or taxes. Councilor Sankowitz has a opioid task force that's come up with. We have a policy with the 4 pillars to basically fund programs, harm reduction, and you could speak more about all of the, yeah, certainly, because there has been a lot of work done on our end, not to just give money out, but to have a policy.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about the task force. Hi, Katie. We are a 9-member task force that has $400,000 to recommend to the City Council for funding. Our grant application closed at the beginning of May. We're scoring those applications now, and we'll bring our recommendations to the City Council. The 4 pillars are prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. So those come straight from the legal settlement. And then under that, anyone who applied to our grant would need to show that the work that they're doing applies under those pillars. And if anybody has any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. If that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
I know money went out for a lot of like treatment, recovery, harm reduction projects, I believe, and there was talk of money going out towards prevention projects. I'm just wondering, have the applications gone out for prevention projects? Because I know it's been talked about for many years, well, at least 2. Because a lot of what I'm hearing, it sounds like we need to go more upstream with prevention, which doesn't get a lot of funding. I mean, it just doesn't. It's hard to prove that prevention works. It takes a long time to prove that. So I'm just wondering, since we're talking about the opioid settlement funds, if you have any info on whether or not prevention funding is going to go out anytime soon.
Yeah, and these are different pots, so I can't speak to what the state and the county levels are doing, but the City of Augusta level, that's one of the pillars we're looking for, and I know at least one of our applicants applied directly for prevention funding, so there is a likelihood. I can't speak for the task force because we haven't done all of our scoring yet, but there is a possibility that some of Augusta's money will be going to prevention funding. And after this $400,000 pot of money, the council will decide at that point if we want to keep doing this, if we want to allocate the money in a different way that is ours to allocate.
Laura, do you have information on this?
I actually have a question directly for you.
Call me whatever you want.
Could any of the downtown Augusta businesses that are struggling with drug use apply for opioid funds to fund camera systems that can help enforce the crime and provide the police with the evidence that they need to stop it?
Prevention is more for the individual use. So all of our decisions are under a pretty strict memorandum of understanding that came through this lawsuit. My gut says no. I'd have to read it again. It is really geared toward preventing individual use of opioids and then kind of following those individuals through that track. But I don't know for sure off the top of my head, but reading through the MOU does outline pretty specifically that there's a bunch of examples of what these funds can be used for, so we could look into that, but my gut says probably not.
Or what about potentially like a patrol officer funding their salary to be able to walk the downtown? Would that be an option or no? No? Okay.
No, you looked into that? Yeah.
Is the pot a one-time fund?
We receive, and it just kind of shows up, and it's supposed to last several more years, but like 2038. So like it just comes into our account, we account for it, and 2-3 times a year, sometimes more, sometimes less.
In irregular amounts.
Irregular, yeah.
So what I've heard from you guys is housing is a primary function, right? There's not enough of it. It's keeping people who, a small group is getting a lot of attention over a larger group. Can the money be used to build housing? Because that is prevention, right? It helps individual people directly by putting
Yeah.
something in. And you know, when they build these small modular individual houses, we have multiple properties in the city. The city has so much city property. That's why taxes in the city on homeowners, right, are so high. Can we utilize any of those properties to build these modular homes, giving housing with this? It seems like a no-brainer if we know that that's the majority of what the issue is.
I think there's possible pathways for that. There's definitely pieces of housing that fall under recovery and treatment, and I'm thinking of specific examples of getting people into sober housing and things like that. I think basically every decision has to be made of whether or not there is a logical explanation of how it relates, and that we talk about Exhibit E a lot in the opioid settlement fund world. The lawyers really outlined everything that you can do with these funds. So that feels closer to me. I'd want to look before I give you a hard yes or no. But there's definitely forms of housing that fall under this fund.
But my understanding, it's not housing for the sake of housing.
Yes.
Just for the sake of housing. That would not be an eligible use of the opioid settlement funds.
It needs to be connected.
Has to be a connection with the other pillars.
Well, the people are the connection, right? If
I hear you. Not disagreeing, Katie.
So,
I think there's a lot there.
on average, how many unhoused that would actually take on the housing, who would seek help, who then would be able to have a job, then to move out of it to make room for somebody else? How many of those units would you have to build to make that happen? And then it would be a cycle that would then propagate itself.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for you right off the top of my head.
Do you have an answer for how many you think? Because this number of 500 was thrown out, then a number of
Right.
100 and some odd was thrown out.
The number of homeless in the community is not really the number you're looking for. The number you're looking for is how many people would be willing to
Right.
enter a program like
Right,
that.
those
And
two
that's not
things.
an easy number to come up with, because that changes from 1 minute to the next. So I can't give you a number that would be accurate. If you build it, they'll come.
Okay, so if you could find out some kind of rough idea, somewhere a number, then you could figure out the money that's coming in, and if that moving forward would help the unhoused, and, it would hurt today, but help tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's the model you're describing, Bishop, is exactly that you're meeting people at where they're at, and then they move up to a next step, and that's some of the things we've talked about that are proven models that works. And I know that one of our recent models, we did look at the main opioid, the big pot of money being able to be, we were talking about TIF funding. Can opioid funding be used instead? So that's something we're exploring as well for that specific type of housing.
So,
right.
Don't want to be seen not playing with others, playing with others.
In most apartments, a lot of apartments being switched over to Airbnb, which is for outside people, because they're making more money turning them over. I can see that on the contrary part of it. If we're losing housing because of that, and we're not gonna put any moratorium on it, which some towns will do that, some places will do that, we're not doing that. How do we overcome that? This seems like if you have this pot of money coming in for years, it really feels like a really good use of it over other uses.
Yeah, absolutely, if it can be used.
let me interject. I dare say that just putting up a little home is not gonna be the answer. You need to complement a roof over someone's head with supportive services. And that can, that's a whole nother ballgame too. We've got one example underway that we're not sponsoring, we're supporting in the way that we can, but
So you
it's,
talked about all of the services, the way you talked about a lot of different services. You talked about money coming in that they're getting a check for. You talked about different types of things. I think you haven't addressed is the housing, which would put them on their feet for them to do the job they're already going and getting, they already have, right? A lot of them have jobs, to help them move on to the next step. It seems like it's the missing piece.
I mean, I think you're identifying that we're really talking about two different groups, right? And so there's a group of people who are the working poor, who are not able to afford a home, and then there's the group of people who are not working and who, if given a place to live, would need services. They wouldn't, so it is two different groups, and I don't know what the money can be used for, but I'm wondering, Bishop, if your question might be able to be answered a little bit by Victoria, in that how many people are turned away who want to be able to sleep at the Bread of Life shelter. Is there a wait list? Because I actually have no idea.
So we do have the veteran shelter, obviously has specific qualifications, and between the family shelter. But one thing that kept popping up as you were having this conversation is people have free will. People will choose. The resources that are in Augusta now are great, and people are choosing not to use them. I think that we're not taking into consideration the volume of mental health and addiction issues where people, you know, I think all of us in the room who are part of these social service agencies, you ask and you ask and you ask, like, is today the day? Is today the day you're gonna come in? You know, we pick them up off the street, Narcan, and get them into an ambulance, call the police, call the fire department, and people still the next day are doing the same thing.
But you guys
So,
just talked about it. It's a small subset.
sure.
Not the overall larger part, which is
Sure.
our work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to just the housing who want it.
So I think what I'm hearing is how many people who want the help are not able to get the help. And then there's the other group that may not want to assistance. That's a different issue. But if someone wants to sleep at a homeless shelter, can they get in?
Yeah. If people want help, and they can get the help, and if our shelter's full, we will help them.
I'm scared, and I'll tell you what, I wouldn't mind having a roof over my head, and a home cooked meal.
You get.
But you know what? Sometimes it's a real hard thing, because I'm a felon. And I cannot get no housing whatsoever, because I'm a felon. Because they changed the rule, they said I'm not allowed to have any housing because I'm a felon.
Who told you that?
I got a letter of respect from them 3 years ago, telling me that. I wish I could
Apply
show
for
you the
shelter.
letter. I
I'll
wish I
get you
could
a bed
show you
tomorrow.
the letter.
Yep.
I'll get you a bed tonight. You
I wish I could have.
No, you can.
You wanna go to shelter tonight?
We can drive you
I
there.
will get you a bed. You wanna go?
Victoria, would you give the microphone to Annalee, please? Thank you. Thank you.
They did it just so they could leave.
Yes. Counselor.
Yes, hi, Annalee Morris-Polly. I'm speaking here tonight in my role as the operator of Angles Behavioral Health Services, which is a service provider here in the city of Augusta and has been for quite some time. And we work a lot with the population that we're talking about, and we also work with both the subset population as well as the working poor. And there are a lot of resources, and I'm very proud of the city of Augusta for all the resources that we do have and that we do offer. I do think, though, that the subset is really a lot of what we're talking about here tonight that folks are concerned about. So as a provider, if we have an individual who is ready for sobriety, who wants to get housing, we have a place for them here in the city. If we have somebody who has a mental health and wants sobriety, we also have a place for them to go. It's a model called Recovery Homes. We have 166 beds here in the city. It is supported by GA funding. It's also supported by housing funding through the Maine Association of Recovery Residents, have some funding that we can get as well. And we have individuals who work. The nice thing about the recovery home model is that it requires treatment. It requires treatment for you to stay there at the level in which you need treatment. So if you have an individual who doesn't need a large level of treatment, they can stay there. If you have an individual who needs intensive outpatient treatment, medication management, and is willing to engage in that, that they have a place there as well. There's a requirement for job searches. It's really kind of the entry point. And I don't believe that there has ever been somebody who says, I want a recovery bed and I'm ready, that we have not been able to find them one that night. So what we're really struggling with are those with significant and active substance use. And often those are individuals with very significant mental health diagnoses that are going along with them. And so one of the things that as a provider we struggle with is getting individuals into hospitalization where they need really to be look at medications and have some pretty significant stays, and also getting them from there into what we call PNMIs, which are the residential facilities. And so those are really what they call priority populations get those, and those come through the Department of Justice. So when we enacted this 2021 homeless protocol, I feel like it kind of infringed a little bit on those individuals who needed that level of care of of going through the Department of Justice system. I mean, we've even come to a point where we have supported somebody who is so significantly ill and we can't get them treatment that we didn't bring them to a court hearing so that a warrant would go out, so that they would get arrested, so that they would end up in the hospital, so that they would get treatment, and that they would then end up at a PNMI, which is the level of care that they needed. And so I think the homeless protocol that was passed in 2021 has done an injustice to some of these individuals, and I think those are the individuals that a lot of businesses here struggle with. The ones that we continue to see, that continue to, we feel that they're not getting the treatment that they need. And so if we could speak a little bit to that homeless protocol and maybe those individuals, because those are the individuals really that we're hurting them to some degree by doing what we've done. So anyway, I just wanted to speak a little bit to that and maybe talk about that 2021 homeless protocol and whether or not we're going to readdress that and look at that.
So,
I mean, that came from the legislature, right? So that, nobody here drafted that. But what you're talking about is really circling back to what we heard from Mr. Parkhurst, which is compassion with accountability. And that actually is the greatest compassion. So I do think that's interesting. I didn't know that if somebody wants services, they can get it. And that's a huge message to hear.
Councilor Michoud.
Well, we're going to dummy down for a minute here. I've been listening all evening, and I just brought a life left, and my question was sort of directed at them because they said there's 12 to 15 people, the characters that you see on the street that are the substance, they are probably the ones that have the substance abuse problem. Well, I'm listening to this young lady over here. They're cleaning up hundreds of needles here and hundreds of needles there. Just how many times in a day do they stick a needle in their arm? I'm asking. I'm not trying to be sarcastic or anything. And how many we have 2 places in Augusta that give out clean needles. How many do they give out in a week's time? And again, I'm ignorant. How many times does a person need to keep themselves high on a 24-hour basis? By the sounds of things with all these needles, they probably have a cigarette and take a needle, and then another cigarette and take another needle. I don't know. I'm just wondering. It just sounds like there's an awful lot of needles being used by a very few people. And if you have a problem at home, I'm pretty sure you're not driving down the road and throw your needles on the ground in State Street. So I don't think anybody has an answer for that, but I'm thinking that the problem, we might be minimalizing this problem. And you know, somebody told me the other day, the people you don't see are the people that want the help and need the help. And the people that you do see, they don't want any help, and they're not going to get any help until they wake up someday and I've had enough, or they don't wake up someday. So I guess I don't have probably nobody has that answer. I'm just trying to figure out how these 15 people are distributing hundreds of needles all over the city all week long. Thank you.
So at this point,
Hi, that answer can be found in our annual report for harm reduction and syringe service programs in the state. You can see that historically, for the past very long time, and you can look it up from last year. It's directly on our site as well. Maine CDC under hepatitis harm reduction annual reports.
Do you have a ballpark?
I don't have a ballpark off the top of my head tonight. I guess I could look up the form as well, but I also can direct it to you as well. The form is easily accessible.
All right.
Courtney's gonna give us some, just a ballpark on hers.
All right. In the meantime, Councilor Lynn?
I just want to clarify something. So, you know, years ago, I was on the United Way board. We worked with Maine General to start the first harm reduction when there was an HIV crisis. It was effective. But that's an exchange. That's not the initial source, nor is CDC. Hopefully she can correct or help me here. No, the person for needles can be purchased at a pharmacy by anybody. Is that correct? That's the initial source. It isn't the two harm reduction centers that's the initial source. The issue is people can just go get needles easily. So that's why I don't contribute to panhandlers. I don't give to panhandlers because I'm afraid some of that may go towards the initial source of needles. I don't believe the initial source are the harm reduction centers. You just go into a drugstore, you can buy needles.
So at this point, I want to move beyond the questions and answers. If you have questions, you can ask them, but if you have a remark or comment or an insight, now's the time to do it. At the same time, I still want to call on people who haven't had any opportunity to speak yet before I call on people a second or third time. So is there anybody I haven't called on yet that has a question or a comment for the group? All right. Okay. Right, Mr. Parkhurst.
I'm Dick Parkhurst. If you don't know me, I own some properties on Water Street. And homeless situation has become a problem. I have a 3-page statement that I won't read at this time of night, but there are some things that I need to say.
Mr. Parkhurst, there's a request to kind of speak right in the microphone.
You know, I started working downtown about 15 years ago. I developed 19 apartments and 6 retails or commercial spaces. And for about 12 years, Augusta was going like this. People were investing, a lot of apartments being built, little grocery stores. We went from 1 restaurant to 9. And then about 18 months ago, we got flat. And now we're going like this. I'll survive, but I'm terrified for downtown. I've stopped buying buildings. I've stopped making improvements. I, for the first time in 15 years, I had a tenant come look at an apartment, and before they left, they said, well, based on what I saw coming in here, I think I won't be coming downtown. For the first time in 15 years, I have a waiting list. You know, something, excuse me, something dramatic has changed. And it's hurting all of us. Doesn't matter if you're housing, or it doesn't matter if you're homeless, it doesn't matter if you're a drug addict, we're all paying the price for this. And, you know, we had a bunch of little retails open up, and they're disappearing. Of the 9 restaurants, we've had 1 close and 2 are for sale. And I could talk for another hour, but I won't take your time. But what I will say is, everyone in this room, and those who have left here tonight, and those watching the screen, need to take this problem seriously. We need to work together, but we need to turn this thing around, or we're going to become disguster again. That's my speech. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
This will only take 2 minutes because I knew the question was going to come up that we need a solution, and I knew that no one's going to come up with a solution. So here's the solution. Not for the whole entire homeless population, obviously, but just for a portion, because we have the Augusta Department of Economic Development that could strategically move a percentage of our homeless population off the streets for a significant portion of the day. All they have to do is sell a day labor corporation to open a branch office here. So instead of being on the streets, those that want to work a day and get paid that day will either be doing so or be waiting in that office for a work order. All they need is a photo ID, a social security card, and an OSHA 10-hour construction standards card. They can get that 10-hour OSHA construction standards card right here in Augusta at the Maine Department of Labor's Safety Works Training Institute. They have multiple OSHA classes. I have 125 OSHA classes underneath my belt. I said 100 because I didn't want to be facetious, but I even got a 40-hour Fire Inspector Level 1 certificate from the Maine Department of Public Safety's Fire Marshal's office back in 2016. When I walked into a day labor office, they were like, okay, there's our safety officer right there, but I didn't stick around long enough in Portland to take the job, and I've had other places offer me safety, OSHA safety, because I know OSHA and stuff. But I also take a plumbing course from Stratford Career Institute, which is by mail. It's not computer. It's not computer. I have to say that because people always say computer. It's by mail, Stratford Career Institute. You can take construction. It's not easy. Trust me, it's not. It's not a joke. It's not easy. You have to like memorize 33 pages, frontwards and backwards before you can even take the test. And yeah, once you know that, people are going to ask you questions at the job. Do you know your stuff? And they're going to ask you specific questions. That's going to make it easy for them to get hired at a day labor place. And obviously, the next step was going to be a check cashing corporate office. So those without a bank account can still cash their checks. Now, I understand the homeless, and that's why these places also have people at those places with a vehicle that drive the employees to and from the job place. And those with vehicles get paid extra to transport co-workers to and from that day's job site. Now, the only other solution there is to have a huge manufacturing facility like we used to have with the digital SEI building, with large assembly lines, and with Maine's high taxes and electricity costs, chances are that's not going to happen. And just recently, we had a Popeyes restaurant open up here. On that grand opening, all the other competition places had empty parking lots. So this horizontal economic development needs to consider ending as a solution. The day labor place is the way to go because you can build more apartment units here, but again, the current high cost of rent requires renters to have a job to pay for them. Thank you very much. I have to leave. Have a great night.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else like to contribute? Yes. Matt?
Wyatt Lawyer, Augusta again. I would like to say I've talked to a lot of people in town over the past year or so, knocking doors, unsolicited, just random conversations. And people are really tired of being told not to believe their lying eyes. When a lot of these things come up with like the needle exchange programs with the unlimited free needles, we're told, oh, well, we pick up more than we put out. But you just look, your own eyes, you can just see it. And I've lived in this town my entire life. I was born here. I rode these streets as a kid. There was not needles everywhere as a kid. And I don't really understand the city's kind of fascination with this kind of service specifically, because that moment that happened with Bread of Life earlier, you'd be very hard-pressed to find somebody that would have a problem with that. If they were given a bunch of needles to shoot up, a lot of people would have a problem with that. So if you could eliminate the syringe services out of the equation, you could turn homelessness more into a 90-10 issue, where 90% of the people would like to help. Shelter is a human right, food is a human right, water is a human right. a clean needle to shoot up is not a human right, and it's not our job as a city. That's my thoughts on it. That's what I've heard from the community. I think some of these organizations are almost unethically entangled within our city. That's a different conversation for a different day. But if we could eliminate the needle programs, I think you would have a lot more support in general for the homeless. Those little programs are doing a lot of work against the homeless cause, just from the people I talk to. Now, there's different social groups all through Augusta. This is certainly a huge issue, and I don't really understand why we can't eliminate these programs.
Does anybody have an answer about why we can't eliminate the programs? I mean, they're authorized. Do you have an answer about why you can't eliminate the programs? Or can you eliminate the programs? Or is it a legislative function?
We can talk about why these programs are important. When we see programs like syringe services being eliminated, we see what happens in Scott County, Indiana. What happened in Scott County, Indiana was that when they said no more syringe service programs, they had a huge HIV outbreak. Granted, we're already having that here in the state of Maine as well. I have been an on-the-ground outreach worker in Bangor for the past year and a half. I work day in and day out, had been working in PrEP, providing HIV prevention education and community resources as well. When we don't have these syringe service programs, people are 50% more likely to contract HIV or hepatitis C. So this is also public health in action. And that's kind of what I wanted to leave that on.
That wasn't my question. My question was why we couldn't eliminate the programs. If the city has any intentions of doing so, no intentions?
Well, I'd be surprised if the city had authority in and of itself to eliminate needle distribution programs.
All the research I've done on it says the CDC can't limit how many they can give out, but multiple municipalities have banned them.
As we should do.
So the city is doing us a disservice by not banning these programs, is what my comment was.
Okay. Yes, Bishop?
So Maine Rep, they have, since they opened in about a year, they have collected 34,300 needles. They distributed 18,203. Just saying, that's their numbers.
Didn't get to you.
Anyone else? We got a couple of microphones. Yes, in the front.
Thanks. I wanted to talk about the two different sides that we're really talking about. We're talking about the unhoused population and then kind of everybody else that has to share all the space together. And we are all one community, and so I think it's really a place that we need to talk about with how are we dividing the care for these people and the effectiveness it takes versus the compassion that we have for everybody else. How much are we going to have the overlap with it, and who's the one that's going to decide which side kind of needs more treatment than the other?
I don't know. I mean, it's a balancing act. It's community values. I mean, and reflected through the elected officials that you have at the state and local level. I mean, so I don't. Everybody kind of works on that on their own. You do it? Nothing. Anybody else? Again, in the white.
Thank you. So in terms of solutions and ideas for what the city can offer, looking at the #1 recommendation of the task force, which is a low barrier shelter, I think my fear is that having seen 2 proposals for low barrier shelters be shut down by community opposition, that any RFPs for the city land, which is awesome and very well intentioned that it's being offered, my worry is that the same community opposition will be there. And I worry that that is going to have enough of a chilling effect that you won't get very many RFPs, applications for the land that you offer up. And so I think it would be immensely helpful from a nonprofit standpoint to know that this was something that the community had already agreed upon as a space that was acceptable for this type of service.
Yeah, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Nash?
When will you be?
When would what?
When will you be ready to put the RFP out? Because we've been talking about it for about at least 8 months now.
So we're waiting for the planning board to wrap up the land use ordinance changes. And the next step would be going forward with the RFP, because we need to know what the parameters are for a licensed facility and where it can go and so forth. And we can't offer the RFP until we have that finished.
Do you know when the next special meeting for the planning board is to discuss this?
So the planning board has discussed it twice, but they've put it off to another meeting, June 9.
Yeah, I believe they've asked for the city attorney and corporate counsel to answer questions for them before they would accept any policy changes.
Yes, the planning board they've had 2 workshops on this. They will have a public hearing that is scheduled on June 9th. What they're asking for at this point are some clarifying questions from Corporation Counsel. What they will do is they make a recommendation to City Council, and then City Council will adopt an ordinance. So they're working through a process of trying to identify exactly what those recommendations are going to be so that everybody has an understanding from in the permitting process at the planning board level and then the licensing process at the City Council level, exactly how those things will mesh together. I'm hoping that they, excuse me, I'm hoping that they will make a recommendation at this next meeting. It may be one more after that, I'm unsure.
Was the planning board consulted in the writing of the ordinance? And if not, why?
Because the planning board, the writing of the licensing ordinance does not implicate the planning board process. Licensing is not a province of the planning board, it's the city and the city council. So that's why they're not consulted on that. They are being consulted on the changes that were discussed by the subcommittee with respect to things that impact the land use ordinance, their province.
It just seems kind of like a waste of time to not do this process jointly.
So I do know a particular planning board member with expertise in the area did contribute comments to the subcommittee that worked on the licensing ordinance. So they were aware of it and they contributed, but again, the licensing piece is distinct from the land use piece.
I just feel like the city is kind of taking a backwards route on solving this problem, and like it just seems like there's a lot of miscommunication within the city departments on how this process is happening, which is just slowing it down, and frankly, got to exacerbate the problem for every citizen, housed or unhoused.
Thank you for your opinion. Anyone else? Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming out in the first place and really thank all of you who stayed to the end. I think it's the end. I'm ready for it to end. But I'm willing to stay as long as we continue to have participation. But I'm not hearing it or seeing it. Okay. Megan, go ahead.
There are funds available to people that have $35 fees. It's, again, a matter of willingness to participate in programs that are offered.
Is there a fund for a family?
kid steps on a needle, you know,
Yeah.
that's what's making me sick.
Well,
When it's at ball fields and there's lots of porta potties up. The playgrounds.
And they're taking the porta
I
potties out
cringed
because
last
of the
week, the little
needles.
girl was running around barefoot. She said something to her grandmother, and she's like, I hadn't thought of that. It's pretty sad that you can't have a kid run around with nothing on her feet.
I don't disagree with you.
I know you don't, but it really, it sickens me that we have to worry about this. It's very sad.
Katie?
My question is just, what are the next steps? What are we doing after tonight? Because I don't like leaving a meeting without knowing what's gonna happen here. You can't, sorry.
Well, my goal, as I stated at the beginning, was at least to have a forum where we have experts talking about where we are, what to, kind of managing expectations, having a chance to ask and answer questions of people who have the answers, to kind of give the community a common baseline of information. We're going to continue to work on some of the initiatives that we've got underway. We're going to continue to revisit the recommendations from the task force. There's suggestions about changing legislation, whether it's the homeless protocols or whether it's coming up with funding from state government to fund different initiatives. We're going to, I'm sure we'll kind of debrief what we've heard tonight and see if there's some nuggets of insight or things that we can do that we haven't thought of or done before. That's the best answer I can give you at 11:15.
Yeah, if I may?
Yes, please.
I mean, there's been a lot discussed tonight, and a lot of stuff we didn't invent in this room. It's been going on. This is a super problem of a generation. Let's level set on this for a minute, okay? We're not the only community dealing with this, and we can't find a community that we can model and fix it. Nobody's come up with an overall fix, but there's a lot of good things that are being done, and we talked about a lot of those things in the room tonight, right? So, when you talk about the co-occurring disorders and providing services for those issues, and all of the providers in here that are doing great things in this community. So I think the next steps are, we know what the resources are out there, and if there's something we don't have in this community that somebody else does and it's working, we look towards that as well. But in the end, we've got a list of things that we need to continue to work on, because again, it's not gonna magically tomorrow it disappears, but it's going to manage it better than what we're doing now. And that's what we need to find, is a better way and continue to improve with what we're doing. So those, to me, are the next steps. And this is great because it's all recorded and we can go back and say, oh yeah, they mentioned this and there was some good information with that. So this has been very good for us to hear. As the mayor said, to kind of put that out to the community and give one message, but we heard things loud and clear tonight as well. So we appreciate everybody and the feedback, so thank you.
I have a quick question just from a nursing standpoint on the needle issue. And I've looked this up myself, but is there any proof that if I provided a needle box that people would put the needles in it? Like, are there any studies that have been done if you offer locations? I don't know what locations are in Augusta for people to give their dirty needles, but are there readily available stations where people can dump their needles instead of in playgrounds and yards?
There are some in Augusta.
Can we put them where they're dumping their needles down?
Right. I just wonder if I put a box, would they put it in it, or are they still gonna throw it on the ground? But I would be willing to try that, even though they're not supposed to be on my property, but to get them to properly dispose of a biohazard.
This is anecdotal, of course, but working in Bangor, I worked with a few different organizations that did community cleanups and also had sharps containers, largely like on the trails and places that people were staying anyway. And what we found was that they were used. The concern was getting somebody to change them when they were full. So if you were going to take that and back to the exchange. And also we found that lots of the community members, if they found them elsewhere, would collect them and bring them there, or have them, knowing that somebody was coming to do a cleanup, would have them in a safe place and like give them to us on Friday morning when they saw us. So there's a lot of energy there for wanting that stuff. And a lot of us have been told, like, no, you can't do that, but as a private citizen.
Yeah, I think, I know I've had a conversation with the city manager about, besides the ones we already have, trying to make more available in the logical places.
Right.
And
And
that
that's
might be
something we can improve on as well. Yeah, exactly. That's a takeaway from tonight. Yeah, absolutely.
Highly disclosed areas like my yard.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the library's getting it.
Yeah, it's all around. Right, yep. Yep.
And then just schedule someone to pick up the biohazard on a routine, or call it in and say it's full.
Good evening. Is everybody still awake? I'm struggling. I just wanted to share that, you know, the communities we've talked about, and as our city manager just said, you've got Portland, you've got Lewiston, you've got Waterville, you have Augusta, and the one thing they all have in common is the service centers. It's where the resources are. So the folks are attracted here. That's the problem. Augusta happens to be a relatively small community. There's about 16,000 homeowners here. But yet we have, as we were told, maybe anywhere up to 500 unhoused. They don't all come from here. They were brought here. So it's like everybody's business, like everybody in the state, or like everybody in Kennebec County, but it's become Augusta's responsibility. Now, we write a check to the county government this year for your tax money to the county for $3.2 million. We do this because all the rural communities that don't have police departments require the sheriff's departments to take care of their law enforcement. So consequently, we write the biggest check because we're the largest community in Kennebec County. Waterville writes the second largest check. And all the other small communities that don't have law enforcement officers get all the resources from Kennebec County Sheriff's Department. I think we need to engage our county government, Patsy Crockett, our county commissioner, and we need to really seriously talk about a redistribution of those resources. Not only do we write the biggest check, but we happen to host Kennebec County Jail and the Sheriff's Office, and those exist in well-valued properties. They don't pay a penny in taxes to the city of Augusta on. So we really have to have a serious discussion at that level to talk about getting some police help so that the problem that keeps coming up saying our police officers are too thin, there's not enough of them, well, then let's let Kennebec County take care of the rural parts of Augusta, and then we can redirect our city department to go to the inner city and handle the problems that are causing a lot of this, at least for the time being, till we get balanced out again. And then we need to talk on the state level and the county level. This is everybody's problem. We need funding to build a center, and it's not just our responsibility. I've never once, I've heard lots of people come here from Gardner and Hollowell, some of their leaders, and tell us what we should do. Never once known of any one of those communities to stroke a check to Bread of Life or UCLC or any of the other service agencies here locally. They just tell us what to do, but they don't want to participate. So until somehow that changes, that they get forced to participate, they won't. And the only way I think that that can happen is through pressure on our county government. So at, oh God, 11:15, that's my 10 cents. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right, no big speeches to conclude. I'm just going to thank everybody for coming.
Mayor,
Our chief.
I swear it's very quick. I just wanted to I just wanted to extend to the group that if I didn't answer your police-related questions, reach out to me anytime. I've got some business cards I'll share. I'll stick around for a few minutes. And for the listeners, same thing. If you have any questions, please give me a call. Thank you.
Earl, Chief, Don, Madam District Attorney, thank you very much for helping us.
Our pleasure, Mayor.